Chapter 1282. Arriving at the inverted stratum, Fan Wujie finally understood why he needed his time light Tao seed to go against the flow of the river of time to reach Dara heaven. This was because this was a chaotic world. Everywhere was chaotic qi, matter, and the embryonic form of qi. Time and space were chaotic here, and directions were disordered. Chaotic qi was everywhere, and it was hard to see through it with one's eyes. His time light seed of Tao was like a compass here, and it could point out the direction in the chaos. The time light seed of Tao could comb out a clear timeline in the chaos, and pinpoint where they were at. If they continued down, it would be the place where Rahu was sealed, the time of the end of Tao. Going forward, it would be the primordial history, before the creation of heaven and earth, before the chaos, where everything was eternal and free, Dara heaven. Demon Corpse Tao Master held onto the Celestial Execution Sword Talisman. Without Fan Wujie, the Celestial Execution Sword Talisman could also pinpoint history, but it could only pinpoint 3 coordinates, which were the 3 times when the 4 Celestial Execution Swords appeared: the first tribulation of the creation of heaven and earth, the devil tribulation of Ro, the second tribulation of the great immortal tribulation, the war of gods, and the time of the end of time when the devil god of destruction appeared. Other than that, the Celestial Execution Sword Talisman could not pinpoint other times when the 4 Celestial Execution Swords did not appear, nor could it go to the starting point of time, Dara heaven. The surrounding chaotic qi was brewing a shocking pressure, and the essence of this chaotic qi that could not be seen through was actually the universe of the time they were in. The material foundation of the universe turned into a chaotic state here, and all the matter, vitality, and living beings in the universe turned into an impenetrable and heavy chaotic qi that existed here. Theoretically, if one could find a way to decipher the chaotic qi, they could reassemble it and turn it into a primordial universe at a certain time. They could even enter history, go back to the past, and go to the future. Fan Wujie found it hard to imagine that this extremely heavy and difficult to refine chaotic qi was formed from the vitality of the vast universe, and it hid the primordial past and future. No wonder the number 1 killing force in the heavens is needed to open the seal of Ro. Fan Wujie understood, so it is to cut through the chaos and enter that period of history. This chaotic energy was formed by the existence of the universe. It was the ancient history that had been hidden away. It was unknown which great expert had encrypted the river of time and refined it into this boundless chaos. Judging from what Dara said, it seems to be the work of the mysterious torch dragon god. He blocked the river of time and closed the path to an even more ancient universe and parallel universe. It's no wonder that Downlords of the Empyrean universe are able to teleport and change the flow of time in the minor worlds of the Empyrean realm sea, but they are unable to change the flow of time in the entire universe. They are unable to return to before the primordial chaos shattered. The Empyrean realm sea floats within starlight true water, and its own temporal order is relatively independent. There was once a Downlord who entered a minor world, but when he entered the minor world a second time, he was transported to a point in the past. In the heavenly realm sea, the time frame between worlds is relatively independent. To me, changing the time sequence of a small world is a piece of cake. With the power of the cosmic light true water, I can easily decide the time to enter that world. Legend has it that the temporal order of most worlds in the heavenly realm sea is relatively stable. Although the flow of time is different, the relative position in the cosmic light can be grasped. The reason is that after the destruction of the primordial world, a great expert used his supreme divine power to lock all the worlds together. The world clusters are relatively fixed in the cosmic light true water through the method of iron chains. Downlords can shift time by using the relatively independent and unique structure of the time frame of the various worlds in the universe. They don't shift the time of the entire universe. The river of time and the secrets of the cosmic light true water may have been encrypted by the torch dragon god and turned into an undecipherable chaotic energy. Therefore, when it comes to the primordial era before the structure of the heavenly realm sea was formed, downlords can't trace it at all. They can't even peek at that era from the lower reaches of time. That's why there are so many secrets in the primordial era. In an ordinary world, downlords can see the past and future of that world. They can see through all the history and future evolution of that world. It's just like how I can use the cosmic light true water to peek at the shadow left behind by the world in the cosmic light river. This is the ability of downlords to control time. It can't touch the iron rules of the primordial era. Fan Wujie had gained some insight into the secrets of the Chaos Sea. It was like a way to enter the future history. It required the number 1 killing power in the heavens to cut through the Chaos Chi. By using the opportunity of cutting through the Chaos Chi, one could naturally escape into that point in time. However, there was a limit to this method. It required a force to coordinate from the inside and outside to guide the existence in the Chaos Sea. In other words, if one wanted to enter that period of history, they had to coordinate from the inside and outside. They had to set a time to attack, and then bury the foreshadowing in the myriad heavens world. At the right time, they would attack and cut through the void. According to Fan Wujie's calculations, they had to at least cut through the heavenly realm sea and reveal a crack. Then, at the corresponding time in the Chaos Sea, they would slash out another sword. They had to make use of the flaw that the heavenly realm sea revealed at this moment to escape into that point in time. The reason why this power was limited to the level of the all heavens first slaughter was because this was the lowest level of power to cut through the heavenly realm sea. If one wanted to return to the primordial era, they would need the number 1 killing power of the primordial era. In other words, if one wanted to travel to the primordial era, one's own existence would have to pass through the timeline, or they would need the Bell of Chaos or the 4 immortal slaying swords. On the other hand, a Grand Luo who transcended the timeline was merely a consciousness and existence that transcended the timeline. Grand Luo could load files, but could not use cheats to alter data as they pleased or read a portion of data at any point in time. But the 4 immortal slaying swords and the Bell of Chaos could. The 4 immortal slaying swords had the karma of destroying the world. Their appearance would definitely cause a great calamity. Therefore, there was only one power that could truly travel through the primordial era at will, the Bell of Chaos or the Bell of the Eastern Emperor. Fan Wujie vaguely felt that he had touched upon another great secret of the primordial era. The Bell of Chaos could travel through time at will. Didn't that mean that the primordial demon court could easily travel through time and go to the past and the future? If the primordial demon court could travel to any era at will, with such a heaven-defying method, why was the demon court destroyed? The primordial divine court of the past was even demoted to the demon court? Did it mean that the hall of enlightenment of the primordial demon court was discovered in the realm of freedom? Did Dara sense something after witnessing the existence of the hall of enlightenment in the realm of freedom? Fan Wujie sensed that the 2 worlds of the realm of freedom that they had experienced, whether it was the land of sealed dream or the hall of enlightenment, seemed to be hiding a deeper secret beneath the surface of their fearsome and dangerous appearance. What Fan Wujie did not know was that the 4 immortal slaying swords and the Bell of Chaos were not the only powers that could break through the Torch Dragon's seal and travel through time at will. Primordial supreme treasures, such as the Taiji diagram, the Pangu banner, and the Jade Archive of Fortune, all had the power to break through time. But in the absence of the great mediums, the power of primordial supreme treasures to break through time could be sealed by other primordial supreme treasures, or in other words, the number 1 supreme treasure of slaughter in the primordial era. Only a spiritual treasure that could ignore the seal and travel through time could be called the number 1 supreme treasure of slaughter. Because of the balance of power in the primordial era, primordial supreme treasures that could break through time and space were actually in balance with other primordial supreme treasures and postnatal supreme treasures. Only those supreme treasures that could ignore any seal and break through time could have this kind of strategic power. They could play a strategic role in a state of terrifying balance between the great mediums. The realm of enlightenment may be a world created by the demon ancestor of River Styx after the primordial era was broken. The land of sealed dream was created before the primordial era was broken, or at least after the demon ancestor of Ro was sealed. It was then that the ancestor of River Styx and the revered one were born from the discussion of Tao, and the solitary garden was dragged into the ultimate by the ultimate. If the Hall of Enlightenment was also dragged into the ultimate at the same time, doesn't that mean the Hall of Enlightenment only fell into the realm of freedom before the primordial era was broken? Fan Wujie was shocked by his own thoughts, but he couldn't help but think, if the bell of chaos that the ancient demon court had could really travel through time and space at will, could it have appeared once before the primordial era was broken? If that's really the case, this time is so close to the time when the celestial court was destroyed. Could it be that the ancient demon court and the celestial court had a space-time war? The destruction of the ancient demon court is shrouded in mystery, and the destruction of the celestial court is even more inexplicable. It hides a terrifying conspiracy. If the two perish together, it doesn't seem to be something unimaginable. Fan Wujie looked at the Sea of Chaos. They said that they were in the upper reaches of the timeline. He thought to himself, if my speculation is true, then it can be verified. If we go back in time and pass through the critical time when the primordial era was broken, we will definitely hear the sound of the bell of chaos. The sound of the bell of chaos opened up the primordial era and pierced through the world leading to that point in time. We will definitely be able to hear the sound of the bell on the Sea of Chaos and see the light and shadow of the bell of chaos opening up the primordial era. Fan Wujie couldn't help but take a step forward in the timeline, but he was shocked to find that his lifespan had actually turned back 1,000 years. His body's condition had also regressed by 1,000 years. Even the aura of the time-light true water in his magic power had dissipated by 1,000 years, and the time-light Tao seed had also regressed by 1,000 years. Walking in the timeline of the Sea of Chaos will actually affect my body's condition. The shock in Fan Wujie's heart was indescribable. Some of the Tao lords also noticed this. An old Tao lord whose lifespan in the mystic door was nearing its limit cried tears of joy. My lifespan has recovered by 3,000 years. The Fan family's patriarch took a few steps forward, and his trembling body became more and more energetic. Although he still looked old and on the verge of death, his condition was much better. The thick, gloomy aura and the aura of decay that was close to death had dissipated slightly. Very soon, the Fan family's patriarch had walked out of 10 million years. At this time, he still looked old and on the verge of death. Yuan Yu cried out in shock. How long has your patriarch lived? Even after regressing for 10 million years, he still looks old and on the verge of death. The Fan family's third ancestor rubbed his bald head and shook his head. I don't know either. In any case, before I was born, the patriarch was already the patriarch. The second ancestor also said that the patriarch was already like this when he was still alive. No one in the Fan family could live longer than him, not even the records of his origins. He held great power in his hands, and the people who knew him died generation after generation. His past is already an untouchable taboo. Old fart. Yuan Yu clicked his tongue. It looks like your Fan family's patriarch is quite something. To be able to live for so long, in a certain sense, it's quite amazing. And there's a kind of crazy demon in it. According to our demon sex research, if one's realm is not at Dara, the longer one lives, the more devilish one will become. Tao Lord Xue Tu also interrupted. In the demon sect, these old farts are also known as longevity demons. Some of them who have consumed the elixir of immortality and have lived since the primordial era until now, even if they have not attained Dara, will experience a terrifying metamorphosis. There are a few old monsters among the spirited mountain 10 shamans who can already be called demons. Back then, when the witchcraft cult became possessed by the devils, it was also because of those few old monsters who added fuel to the fire. It seemed that as long as one lived for too long, they would be infected by some kind of devil. Therefore, even though the immortal elixir is not something precious to the great mediums, but the great mediums rarely give the immortal elixir to others. This might be the curse of time and reincarnation. What devilish nature infection! It's just that living for too long makes it easy for one to become a pervert. Yuan Yu laughed coldly. The essence of life is birth, old age, sickness, and death. Being undead and unaging goes against the essence of life and goes against reincarnation. It's easy for one to distort one's self and develop perversely. Especially those whose family and friends have died long ago. It's hard not to become a pervert. Aging is a process that cannot be reversed. It's easy to become perverted when you're old, and it's even easier for old farts to become perverted. Yuan Yu laughed coldly. Many existences who have consumed the elixir of immortality are afraid of their perverted development. In the end, they choose to die and re-enter the cycle of reincarnation. Are you saying that the old ancestor might have consumed the elixir of immortality? Fan Wujie frowned, realizing that things were not as simple as they seemed. The elixir of immortality doesn't have any hidden dangers. Yuan Yu shook his head. The so-called longevity demon, the curse of living for too long, is because the life of birth, old age, sickness, and death cannot adapt to the life of immortality. It's actually perverted old farts. It's not because of any devilish nature. It's true that living for too long after consuming the elixir of immortality is dangerous, but those who don't have the chance to consume the elixir of immortality but fear death become perverted even faster. Old farts who fear death are much more terrifying than old farts who have consumed the elixir of immortality. Looking at the old ancestor of the Fan family, whose white hair draped behind his back, Yuan Yu said in a cold voice, "You will never be able to imagine what kind of crazy things those old farts will do in order to not fall into the cycle of reincarnation. Old farts who consume the elixir of immortality and live a long life will, at most, fall into depravity and become old monsters like the 10 shamans of Spiritual Mountain. Although they are perverted, they are not unreasonable existences, and they even have a lot of humanity in them. But for those old farts who desperately want to live, who live in a twisted and terrifying way, who knows what they are when you peel off their human skin, that's a real longevity demon, wearing human skin, who knows what kind of monster they become." Yuan Yu said coldly, "Little fanboy, your old ancestor might have lived to become a longevity demon." The third ancestor of the Fan family laughed coldly. "I don't know what he has lived to, but second brother and I are very afraid of him. If we hadn't been working together in secret and acting cautiously." Fan Wujie looked at the old ancestor, who still looked old even after walking along the river of time for 100 million years, and he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He looked up and saw that everyone who was looking at the back of the old ancestor, be it the righteous or evil, the mystic door, the Buddhist or the demon sects, had a look of disgust on their faces, as if they were looking at some disgusting thing, a bunch of perverted maggot. Fan Wujie suddenly wondered if consuming the elixir of immortality was the right choice. Was he really going to become a monster in the eyes of others in his long life? Living for too long, there is a possibility of living to become a demon, living to become an old fart. But there's also the possibility of becoming a grand heavenly immortal, living a carefree and unfettered life. Yuan Yu stood beside Fan Wujie, and as if he could see the hesitation in the latter's heart, he sneered and said, "Does becoming a grand heavenly immortal have to be a happy thing? Must living long be free and unfettered? I'm sorry, but you can't imagine the happiness of Dara. Longevity devil, the old fart can only obtain eternity, but Dara can obtain eternal freedom. Dara can redeem all mistakes, can retain all good things, can never regret, and can be happy forever. Yuan Yu's tone was filled with temptation and yearning. If you don't become Dara, you will always be an ant. Yuan Yu seemed to be advising, but also warning. After leaving behind these words, Yuan Yu turned around and stood on the sea of chaos, looking at the chaotic air beneath his feet, as if he was trying to see through something. At this time, the demon corpse Tao Master had already located the end of time, where Ro was sealed, using the immortal execution sword talisman. He and Monk Avidya worked together, preparing to head to the end of time, the moment of the end of Tao. Shimori also used the replicas of the 4 immortal execution swords to locate Ro's seal, and he and spiritual master Zi Yang followed closely behind, entering the sea of chaos. The old monster of the witch cult possessed Poya's corpse, chuckled, and followed closely behind without any hesitation. At this time, Fan Wujie finally confirmed that this was also an old monster who had consumed the elixir of immortality. Ajati, Shui Tu King, Fajing, and the few leading Tao lords of the mystic door all had calm expressions on their faces. Although time had trapped them here, they didn't seem worried at all. Going further would mean using up one's lifespan, so as long as one wasn't an undying monster, they wouldn't be able to directly participate in the battle at the end of time. But this didn't mean that Dara didn't have the means to make use of them. Fan Wujie didn't know what he should do. The elixir of immortality allowed him to head to the end of time, to the forbidden area where Dara fought, but with his meager strength, wouldn't going there be suicide? When the universe was destroyed, what was a mere Tao lord like him? What could he do under the threat of the 5 Dara figures? Going upstream was the same as throwing away his life. Fan Wujie had already seen one of the Tao lords of the mystic door pass the point where he had become a Tao lord due to his excessive greed. His Tao fruit instantly turned illusory and shattered, and he actually fell from the level of a Tao lord. He hurriedly tried to retreat, but in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the primordial chaos. Going forward meant being able to use one's own state to determine one's direction in the primordial chaos. It was tantamount to having one's own history and having one's own past to guide one's way. If one rashly changed one's direction, one might get lost in the primordial chaos. At this time, all the Tao lords who discovered the dangers of the primordial chaos instantly recalled the use of Fan Wujie's time light Tao seed. The Shui Tu King rubbed his hands together in embarrassment, as though he was wiping away the sweat on his palms. He and Ajati walked towards Fan Wujie and said, "Little brother, let me calculate for you. The Kane time light Tao seed has a lifespan of at least 1 billion years, and I have some techniques here that can extend its lifespan. Little brother, you are also able to determine the time in this primordial chaos. In other words, while you are still alive, you can come and go as you please." Ajati said in a low voice, "I know some things, but I didn't expect Ro's seal to be like this. No wonder Shemali wasn't worried that I would make a comeback. In this primordial sea, we Tao lords can't advance or retreat. In the end, we are still at the mercy of Dara." The Shui Tu King smiled and said, "There were some Tao lords on the continent in Poya King's palm who were deceived by the remnants of Ro and helped the evildoers. In the end, the remnants of Ro only wanted to make use of them. It was us, the Devil sect, who were magnanimous and rescued some of them from Poya King's heart." They revealed an interesting situation. In Poya King's palm, there is a fragment of Dai Yu Divine Mountain. Not long ago, the northwest wind blew out a Langxian jade. Ajati smiled shyly and said, "The Langxian jade is one of the divine herbs of immortality in the universe. I wonder which fellow Taoist has the fortune to be able to achieve immortality." When Fan Wujie heard this, he could only smile bitterly and said, "What do you want me to do, fellow Taoists? We want to help you germinate your Tao seed." The Shui Tu King suddenly sent him a secret voice transmission and said, "If you want to come and go freely in this place and not be manipulated, You can only rely on the cosmic vine. Fellow Taoist Three Poisons is really good at scheming. He was actually willing to give up the immortality herb to you and break Dara's trap. Ajati sighed and said, Fellow Taoists, how did you know that the old Taoist gave up the immortality herb to me? Fan Wujie asked the two Taoists to explain. However, the Shui Tu King said, I just found out about it. When Fan Wujie heard this, he smiled bitterly. They were just testing him. However, he was intimidated by the confident tone of the duo, and he took their words as the truth. The bloody-soaked devil monarch looked at Fan Wujie's expression, but he shook his head and said, Fellow Taoist Fan, the problem is, why are we so confident in our probing? There is something wrong with the Three Poisons, and it is a very big problem. Ajati said calmly. Along the way, he knew too much. Whether it was hiding by your side and luring you into the returning ruins, or purposely falling into the trap of the Shimori king and entering the blood sea of tribulation, he had interfered too many times along the way. It could be said that along the way, our plan against you had decided half of the result, and that included Dara. And the Three Poisons alone had decided the other half. Things had developed to such a strange state, and his figure was faintly visible behind us. This person has hidden too deeply. I can't see his bottom line. Fan Wujie smiled bitterly in his heart. He is a spy of the righteous path. Of course he has hidden himself deeply. After coming to the inverted stratum, the Chaos Sea, I realized what we had really calculated wrong. Ajati sighed and said, Originally, I thought that I could fight against Dara, but now I realized our plan was very laughable. There was no space in the Chaos Sea for a Tao Lord to set up a plan, and Shimori, who knew the secret inside, had always been in control. If there were no accidents, I could only be manipulated by him. But just now, when we were thinking about how to break out of the situation, we realized that someone had already placed a piece to break out of the situation. The blood-soaked demon monarch said solemnly, The elixir of life was an accident, and the true use of the time-light Tao seed is also an extremely well-kept secret. However, someone managed to combine the two and create the only opportunity for the Tao Lord to intervene. If he was Dara, then he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble to set up a plan. If he wasn't Dara, this kind of coincidence was too strange. Moreover, the elixir of immortality is the key to enter Rose Seal. If we put ourselves in his shoes, who would give up so easily? The Three Poisons might be the person who hid the most among us, but I still can't guess what he wants to do. Ajati said softly. Fellow Taoist Fan, the only hope for us to break free from Dara's control is for you to enter the lower reaches of time and let the Tao seed sprout. Using the power of the time-light vine, we can come and go freely in the timeline. In a while, Dara will go to Rose Seal and observe the situation, then they will come back and bring you to Dara Heaven to let the Tao seed sprout. Traverse the entire timeline, use the power of Dara Heaven, and use Dara Heaven's power to pry open Rose Seal. End of time. You are that lever. And we will be sent to the end of time by the time-light vine controlled by them as cannon fodder. However, the Three Poisons plan allowed you to consume the elixir of immortality and walk to the lower reaches of time. After the Tao seed sprout, the time-light vine will naturally grow towards the beginning of time, Dara. Using the power of the time-light vine, we will enter Dara Heaven and fight to prove our Tao in Dara, breaking free from this trap. The Shui Tu King said, So we will do our best to help you. Your benefits are our benefit. Your hope of proving your Tao is our hope of proving our Tao. However, we hope that you be careful of the Three Poisons. Ajati warned, the Three Poisons are hidden too deeply. His final identity is very likely to shock all of us. Chapter 1283. Chaotic mist swirled above the river of time, and a blurry figure could be seen trudging through it with great difficulty. Behind him were layers of mist, and he could no longer see the Tao Lords who had entered the Sea of Chaos. He was walking along the timeline of the primordial chaos, and he was slowly moving downstream. Countless indescribable and inexplicable primordial chaos energy that contained the encrypted future of the primordial chaos entered his body. It slowly caused his lifespan to drain away, causing his body to slowly age. His white hair fell behind his back, and his footsteps were unsteady. His eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of time and the vicissitudes of life. The primordial chaos energy around him continuously surged into his body, and then it slowly dissipated and flowed away. However, he was able to absorb some inexplicable and inexplicable things from it. He felt as though he had gained something, but he also felt as though he had lost something. The energy in his body continued to rise under the influence of the cosmic light, and it slowly condensed into cosmic light true water. The current Fan Wujie was thousands of times more powerful than he had been in the past. Only now did Fan Wujie understand why the mysterious Zhengyangzi, the Shui-Tu King, and Ajati had all placed their hopes on him. This was because the further he traveled downstream, the more powerful he would become. This was because he was walking towards the future. Although the Torch Dragon had sealed off his memories of the future, his memories of the future were chaotic and incomprehensible. His power could not be faked. However, his power could not be faked. He truly possessed the power of hundreds of millions of years of bitter cultivation, the power of immeasurable tribulations. He suddenly understood something. This was the instinct of his body, and the incomprehensible memories and insights of the primordial chaos in his mind. He suddenly understood that he had lost something, and it was something that was being worn away with the passage of time. His body grew older and more exhausted, and his heart grew older as well. Although he had lost his memories of the future, he had not lost his future Daoheart. Thus, as Fan Wujie traveled downstream, his mind was tempered by the boundless cosmic light, becoming clear and resilient. His expression grew more and more tired, and his eyes were stained with dust. Only the light of wisdom was being tempered until it became clearer and clearer. As a result, his figure was obscured by the primal chaos chi, hazy and lonely, making it impossible to see his true appearance. The only thing that could be seen clearly was his tired eyes. The unique laws of the immortal herb maintained his old body, or rather, as he walked further and further away, his mortal body turned into a sealed time, a cosmic light true water whirlpool. He turned into an innate god that swam in the river of time. His body became more and more like a shadow, with a layer of dense time around his skin. Although the mortal body was strong, it was still a sealed life cycle of an innate god. From birth to death, it was sealed into a ring, and this ring became his mortal body. Yuan Yu could change the age of his fleshly body at will, and he could immediately turn his fleshly body into his strongest, most powerful state. As long as the fiend god body exerted a little force, he could unleash an astonishing power that could kill any ferocious beast he had ever seen with his bare hands. His tyrannical body was so strong that even the destructive tribulation force in the ultimate that he once feared would not be able to leave a mark on him. Even if it was a destructive tribulation that could severely injure him, Fan Wujie could spread these injuries over the course of his long life. This was because his body was not an ordinary mortal body, but a tyrannical life cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Fan Wujie could even feel that he had another mystique that he had learned from the great mystique of the Tao Master of the Demon Corpse Tao, reincarnation, which is the true self. It was a great mystique of a lifetime, reincarnation. He could break free from his current body, surpass the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and live a completely different life. In other words, he could break free from the current cycle and reincarnate into the next life cycle. This heaven-defying mystique was borrowed from Yuan Yu's Lord of Transformation. Fan Wujie could use the reincarnation great mystique, to reincarnate into any race that he had understood the cycle of reincarnation, changing his own nature and becoming that race's cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. These were Fan Wujie's two great mystiques: River of Time reincarnation and reincarnation. Fan Wujie's tyrannical body was because he had understood the reincarnation nature of a connate life form that was naturally compatible with the universe light true water. Using the reincarnation great mystique, he broke free from the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death of his human body and lived another life, reincarnating into the ancestor of that connate life form, a candle dragon. The candle dragon, with a human face and a snake body, was red and looked straight ahead. The human face referred to his identity as an connate god, and also the nature of his true body. The snake body referred to another life essence of the candle dragon, like the Ouroboros, symbolizing the cycle, and the red body implied that the candle dragon was a fire essence. The straight ahead referred to the vertical eyes, the horizontal eyes were the eyes that observed the surroundings, and the vertical eyes symbolized the two directions that transcended the four directions, which was the past and the future, meaning time. The Qing referred to the Fakezhen, meaning the leader of the emperor, and also the gap. The candle dragon was a connate life form, a connate god with a human face and a snake body, and its red fingers had the identity of a god. Its nature was the cycle, and its element was fire. The straight ahead referred to the ruler of time, the leader of time. Therefore, on the surface, the candle dragon's appearance was described as a connate life form with a human face and a snake body, and its whole body was red. Its eyes were vertical, and the gap between its eyes was in the center of its face. In fact, it meant that the candle dragon had the identity of a god, and its nature was the cycle, and its element was fire, the ruler of time. Fan Wujie relied on the time-light seed of Tao and the immortal godly medicine, and from the connate time great Tao and the 9 questions of the netherworld, he comprehended the great mystique of reincarnation and forcefully lived out the next life, and reincarnated as the ruler of time, the connate god candle dragon. Then, with the candle dragon's nature, he turned the candle dragon's natural mystique, the cycle of time, and the cycle of life into a great mystique, River of Time reincarnation. And when these two great mystiques were combined, they created an almost nature-defying mystique of transformation. As long as Fan Wujie comprehended the secret of reincarnation of a race, he could use the great mystique of reincarnation to break free from the cycle of time and reincarnate into that race. If this mystique was not combined with the River of Time reincarnation, it would be useless in a battle. But with the River of Time reincarnation, after Fan Wujie was reincarnated, he could quickly change the state of his body, from a fetus to an adult. The combination of these two mystiques was even more nature-defying than Yuan Yu's art of transformation. He could create a new account at any time, and after that, he could quickly level up and graduate. It was a nature-defying mystique that could truly change the nature of his own body. When Fan Wujie traveled downstream in time, he naturally changed into a state that corresponded to that point in time. He skipped over the endless future of cultivation and enlightenment and seized the results of his own future, or in other words, inherited his own future efforts. However, in Fan Wujie's consciousness, the understanding and memories of these two great mystiques had turned into a chaotic mess. Together with the future understanding and memories, they were firmly sealed in the chaotic mess. Fan Wujie could not decipher them at all. Therefore, he did not know how the River of Time reincarnation and the River of Time reincarnation worked, nor did he know how to use them. He could only rely on his body's instincts to use them. But the River of Time reincarnation was comprehended from the innate body of the candle dragon. It was naturally compatible with this body, and naturally, he could use it instinctively without any problems. The River of Time reincarnation was a great mystique that Fan Wujie had comprehended from the reincarnation and the light of time. He could not use it instinctively at all. It was just like how a cobra could use its infrared vision instinctively, and an athlete could use their muscle memory to run faster, but a programmer could not write code when he lost his memory. This candle dragon walked downstream in the river of time, and it was unknown how far he had walked. Finally, he saw the end of this chaotic ocean. At the end of time, a sword light sealed everything, and the entire chaotic ocean had shrunk to its original point. That cold sword light emitted a boundless might. The candle dragon, the innate body of an innate god, was as weak as tofu in front of it, as inconspicuous as a speck of dust. An indistinct figure stood behind this sword light, and he stood there coldly, facing the world alone. That figure emitted a terrifying aura that could destroy everything. The chaotic energy was shattered by the sword light, and then completely disappeared in front of this figure. Behind him was absolute nothingness. Fan Wujie saw the 5 figures of Dara. They stood in front of the sword light in complete silence, and it could even be said that they were staring at the figure that ended everything in fear. The hearts of the people of Dara trembled, and they could not help but retreat in front of this sword light. The Tao Master of Corpse Demon took a glance behind him, and when he saw Fan Wujie, he retracted his gaze. So it's a candle dragon. I wonder how he wandered here. Tao Master of Corpse Demon, why don't you use the Immortal Execution Sword Talisman to open the passage to the end of time? Shemoli sneered. The Tao Master of Corpse Demon was a little embarrassed in front of this figure's tyrannical aura, but he still maintained his composure and said, I'm just here to explore. If we really want to take action, we have to go to Dara Heaven, plant the cosmic vine, and borrow the power of Dara Heaven to have a chance of success. But don't you have the replicas of the Immortal Execution 4 swords? Why don't you open a passage? Maybe the demon ancestor of Ro will let you go, seeing that you've served him before? The Tao Master of Corpse Demon sneered. Or you, traitor, don't have the guts to? Are you afraid that Ro will crush you to death? After all, the people you killed, Payaji, Chuji, Xiongli Head, Chufu, Baimaziduo, Bananchuo, and Luo Qiantu, they're all there. I only betrayed Payaji, Baimaziduo, and Bananchuo. Shemoli said slowly. Chuji and Xiongli were either killed by the righteous path, subdued by the Buddhists, or killed by the demons under ancestor river Styx. Avidya held the purple gold alms bowl and stared at the sword light at the end of time. He said solemnly, King Shemoli, you've always been on good terms with the Buddhists, but there's something I don't understand. Can you explain it to me? Shemoli didn't reply. Avidya said, why did ancestor river Styx personally kill Paji? Why did he use his own blood sea to suppress it? Shemoli sneered. You dare to ask, but do you think I dare to answer? Do I dare to know that the ancestor personally erased it? Even if I do know? Do I dare to tell you? Shemoli sneered. Avidya, are you crazy? Didn't ancestor river Styx make Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva suffer enough in the battle of the underworld? Even the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva behind you can't afford to offend ancestor river Styx. You sure have guts. Spiritual Master Ziyang stroked his long beard and said, King Shemoli, do you know a thing or two about the destruction of the underworld? Shemoli glanced at Tao Master Corpse and sneered. We, the Azura Demon Path, are raised by a stepmother. How much do I know? But the Corpse Demon Path participated in the battle, and Tao Master is also one of the people who destroyed the underworld and participated in the killing of King Qinguang. Why don't you tell us a thing or two? The Corpse Demon Tao Lord responded with a cold expression. All I did was besiege King Qin Guangwang and send him to the afterlife. The real battle wasn't my turn. The Slaying Demon Clan invited the Yuantu sword to wipe out the underworld and sent Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to Buddhahood. It's a great merit. The Blood Demon Clan broke the cycle of reincarnation, drowned Idu with a sea of blood, and sent the great Emperor of Beyin on his way. We, the Corpse Demon Path, only helped Xingtian and Chiyu kill Yenluo of the 10 Halls. That's no merit at all. Lady Hutu personally invited Qing Hua Empress and Tai Nirvana Heavenly Lord to the afterlife. Ancestor River Styx used the Sea of Blood to shatter the netherworld. We mere Dara are like ants. We can't do anything at all. How can we know any secrets? Are you tired of living? Corpse Demon. Shemali suddenly said, when you participated in the battle to kill Yenluo of the Ten Halls, did you take the opportunity to comprehend the laws of the underworld and memorize its structure and overall structure? The Corpse Demon Path Master stared at Shemali with murderous intent. You want to expose my secrets? Not really. Shemali said calmly. Later, you were cursed by Lady Hutu and feared by the cycle of reincarnation. Those who know about it have a rough idea. You're really bold. Since you dared to do it, why are you afraid of others talking about it? The Corpse Demon Path Master stared at Shemali and said, What do you want to say? Just say it. What do you want to borrow the 4 immortal slaying swords for? I've guessed it. Shemali said confidently, when you surrounded King Qingguang, you definitely went easy on him in order to memorize the laws and mysteries exposed during the collapse of the underworld. Under such circumstances, it's impossible that you don't know anything about the underworld's destruction. There are some things that you've definitely seen through. Now that you have the Immortal Slaying Sword Talisman and I have the replicas of the 4 swords of the Immortal Slaying Sword, I'll lend you a hand. I'll lend you a hand. I'm sure it will increase your chances of success. In exchange, you'll tell me everything you know about the battle that destroyed the underworld. The Corpse Demon Path Master was silent for a long time. Then, under the thoughtful gazes of Spiritual Master Ziyang, he said, Not enough. Shemali staggered and said in horror, Not enough. It seems like the secrets you know are more terrifying than I imagined. The Corpse Demon Path Master looked deeply at Shemali and suddenly said, You want to know the secret of the underworld's destruction and why Patriarch River Styx killed Piaji. I don't know the secret behind Patriarch River Styx killing Piaji. I can only guess that it has something to do with Xianming Ancestral Shaman or Daiyu Divine Mountain. You want to know the secret of the underworld's destruction, the Xianming Bone Spur and Daiyu Divine Mountain. I can't guess what you want to do. The Corpse Demon Path Master said in a low voice, Perhaps your scheme is bigger than mine. Hearing this, the Dragon Clan's Dara also raised his head and glanced at everyone present. All of you have big schemes. I can't afford to offend you since you dared to plot against the 4 immortal slaying swords. My purpose is simple. The Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas will owe you a big favor if any of you can tell me the whereabouts of the ancestral dragon. He turned to Shemali and said, When the ancestral dragon disappeared, the Dragon Clan searched the entire untainted land and the 4 seas, but we couldn't find the ancestral dragon. Based on some clues, we can only guess that it has something to do with Gonggong furiously touching Mount Buzhou, Patriarch Kuanping being bound by river Styx, and Xianming Ancestral Shaman going missing. When he reappeared, Patriarch Kuanping was in deep slumber, and Xianming Ancestral Shaman became the Xianming God. They kept their mouths shut and refused to tell us the ancestral dragon's whereabouts. My guess is that the ancestral dragon's disappearance has something to do with Patriarch River Styx. After the untainted land was broken, the waters of the myriad worlds became much shallower. There are fewer and fewer places to hide people and secret. Therefore, I suspect that the ancestral dragon's whereabouts might be hidden in the ultimate. My purpose is simple. I want to open Rose Seal and find clues about the ancestral dragon. The Dragon Clan's Dara said coldly, Anyone who stands in my way will be my mortal enemy. Spiritual Master Ziyang said, The Dragon Clan is now respected by the human clan, and they are living a good life. However, knowing too much is not a good thing. Spiritual Master Ziyang said, If the ancestral dragon's disappearance really has something to do with Patriarch River Styx, can the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas still question Patriarch River Styx? There aren't many forces in the world who can afford to offend Patriarch River Styx. If the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas doesn't find a backer, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to demand an answer from Patriarch River Styx. Fellow Taoist Ziyang, if you want to rope the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas into the Mystic Doors camp with just a few words, aren't you a little too ambitious? The Demon Corpse Path Master sneered. Even the Buddhists wouldn't dare to think of subduing a untainted land clan with just words. The Dragon Clan was one of the few races that chose to follow the human clan and walk the path of the post-celestial realm. Now, they had great latent power in the myriad worlds. The direct descendants of the Dragon Clan still retain the essence of connate lifeforms, but they spread their branches and leaves, and their descendants spread throughout the myriad world. By building an extremely large external force, they walked a completely different path from the human clan. With the untainted land shattered and the overall decline of connate lifeforms, they did not retreat but instead advanced. The Dragon Clan ruled over the Water Clan, and the difference in levels was especially prominent. However, this also caused the Dragon Clan's external forces to mostly be related to the Demon Clan. The Dragon Clan refused to join the Demon Clan, but the descendants of the Dragon Clan mostly joined the Demon Clan, and even led a considerable portion of the Demon Clan's forces. If not for the Dragon Clan's extreme contempt for mixed blood descendants would not have the right to speak at all. Now, it would probably be difficult to maintain a friendly relationship with the human clan. The main conflict of the Dragon Clan now was the postnatal path, which was aimed at nurturing mixed blood descendants and strengthening the external forces. The Dragon Clan needed to control this external force through a hierarchical system. The postnatal path had strong branches and weak branches, and the fundamental system required the strong branches and weak branches. On one hand, they needed the power of the lower levels, and on the other, they needed to suppress the lower levels. This conflict greatly consumed the Dragon Clan's potential for development. At this time, without the absolute core, the ancestral dragon, to suppress the Dragon Clan, the development of the Dragon Clan would not be optimistic. Regarding this, perfected Ziyang was almost well aware of it. Currently, the main conflict of the heavens was divided into the righteous and evil, and the human and demon clans. The righteous path had always maintained the path of suppressing the devil path, keeping Buddhism in check, forming a good relationship with the Dragon Clan, and controlling the Demon Clan. Now that the ancestral dragon was missing, the righteous path was not afraid. Helping the direct descendants of the Dragon Clan to suppress the mixed-blood descendants was not an easy task for the Mystic Door, which had a very powerful group of top experts, but it was not a problem. The righteous path helped the Dragon Clan to maintain their physique, and in the process, let the Dragon Clan get closer to the Mystic Door. This process had always been very smooth. Now that the Dragon Clan was looking for the ancestral dragon again, perfected Ziyang, as the Dara of the Mystic Door, had to take very subtle measures to protect the interests of the Mystic Door. First of all, he could not destroy the relationship between the human clan and the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, and he could not push the Dragon Clan to the Demon Clan's side. But at the same time, he was not happy to see the Dragon Clan break away from the Mystic Door and return to their independent position. Therefore, perfected Ziyang had to be very secretive. On the surface, he would do his best to help the Dragon Clan find the ancestral dragon, but in private, he would secretly trip them up. It was a test of his political skills. I have to use the devil path. Perfected Ziyang and Path Master Corpse exchanged glances. They seemed to have reached a consensus. The Devil Path's boss, the River Styx demon ancestor, might be the mastermind behind the ancestral dragon's disappearance. The Devil Path had long given up on developing relations with the Dragon Clan, so it was not a bad idea to use him to exchange for some benefits from the Righteous Path. In any case, the Devil Path had long been used to playing the role of the villain for the Mystic Door. Path Master Corpse thought to himself, the Devil Path's fine tradition is to be selfish. If there's a chance to sell the Devil Path for a good price, we have to sell it decisively. This is our tradition. Chapter 1284. Standing in front of the space that was cut off by the sword light, Fan Wujie came to a sudden realization. The opportunity for him to prove his Tao to the grand heavenly immortal was right in front of him. Other than the heaven of great overarching, it was only at the beginning and end of time that he would have the chance to let the time-light Tao seed sprout and prove his Tao to the grand heavenly immortal. The time seed of Tao indeed needed a long time to slowly mature and have the opportunity to prove Dara. But that was only the basic requirement to step on the threshold of Dara. What was truly important was to step on the threshold. The path to prove Dara had been explored countless times by predecessors. The interior technique saw through Dara Heaven to prove Dara Heaven, the exterior technique witnessed Dara Heaven to prove Dara Heaven, the chaos divine magic, the Tao seed, the Tao fruit cycle, the Emperor of Heaven, the Nirvana technique. The most important thing was still that step. The Tao seed was to inscribe one's Tao into the heavenly Tao and slowly nurture it until it penetrated the universe and became one of the 3,000 great Tao that was the foundation of the universe. The Tao seed originated from the unification technique. The original Tao amalgamation was to condense a Taoist seed through the study of the 3,000 Taos, and then plant the Taoist seed, sacrificing oneself for the Tao amalgamation. To put it simply, it was to find a Daos of the 3,000 Daos that had lost its administrator, Chaos Godfiend, Grand Luo, and replace the original administrator's status by studying the Tao amalgamation. Therefore, the unification technique could also be called the stealing technique. The only difficulty in the unification technique was to find a great Tao that no one controlled. Therefore, the Tao seed had a Dharma access to ask the great Tao. Once the great Tao had a master and condensed the Tao, asking the great Tao would result in a secret feedback that would cause the condensing of the Tao seed to fail. This was a firewall left by the Almighty who created the unification technique to prevent the stealing technique from Dara, who was still alive and kicking. To practice the unification technique, it was best to have a primordial numinous treasure, because a primordial numinous treasure would definitely occupy one of the 3,000 great Tao. With the help of the primordial numinous treasure, one could comprehend the great Tao within it and use the primordial numinous treasure to condense the Tao seed. However, the unification technique had a fatal flaw. After the unification technique, who was I? Was it the unification technique? Or was it me, who fused with the Tao? Some conspiracy theories said that Tao fusing practitioners were merely nourishment for the great Tao. They were merely a kind of acquired taint. They were merely using their own memories and accumulation to indirectly describe the great Tao. Many friends and Tao companions of Tao fusing practitioners said that after Tao fusing practitioners, they would inevitably face a problem of temperament change, and as time passed, the situation would become more and more serious. Dara was a Tao integration stage connate spirit treasure, but in the end it had transformed into a connate spirit treasure. That was why some almighty beings improved the Tao fusion technique and created the Tao seed technique. Their goal was no longer to fuse the 3,000 great Taos, but to cultivate and create their own 3,000 great Taos. Its basic idea was to follow the Tao fusion technique and find two great Taos that diverged from each other and were in serious conflict with each other. Then, they would condense two opposing Tao seeds. Then, he used the conflict between the two opposing Tao seeds to polish his own Tao. He used the balance between the two opposing Tao seeds to ensure the independence of his own Tao. He let the two opposing Tao seeds form the Tai Chi Tao foundation according to the Tai Chi Yin-Yang principle. Then, he would condense his own Tao seed and cultivate it. Finally, he would use the opposing Tao seeds to fuse with the Tao. In the process of fusing with the Tao, he would use the balance between the opposing Tao seeds to break away from the process of assimilation with the Tao and establish his own Tao in the universe. However, this was only the Tao fusion technique that Fan Wujie knew of. However, The Tao fusion technique was actually created by some Dara's Tao companions in order to save their best friend. It was a mystic technique created for Dara to lose himself. It was not created to prove Dara's Tao. Therefore, it had extremely serious repercussions and inherent flaws. Originally, this mystic technique was based on Dara's Nirmanakya. It was to recreate Dara's Nirmanakya that had lost himself. Then, he would continue to polish the Nirmanakya until he had a strong enough sense of self. Finally, when the Nirmanakya was cultivating, he would be taught the Tao fusion technique. Then, he would use the Nirmanakya to attack Dara, replacing the impact of losing Dara's authority. It would transform the Nirmanakya's entire life's emotions, self, personality, nature, memories, love, and hate into a single impact. It would impact the Nirmanakya's already indifferent humanity and turn the Nirmanakya into Dara's heel. Using this, he would pull Dara, who had lost himself, back. At that time, the Nirmanakya would be equivalent to Dara's reincarnation, an experience, an account. His entire life was merely the fuel for Dara to reignite his self. Everything that he cherished was just deception and exploitation. In fact, in order to succeed in the Tao fusion technique, the masterminds behind the scenes would even deliberately hone and polish the Nirmanakya's emotions. They would increase the density and intensity of his life, so that his life would be even more magnificent and magnificent, brewing mellow emotions. He had loved, hated, despaired, and lost his mind. When he opened his eyes again, it was nothing but a dream. His lifelong enemy and lover had changed their identities to appear in front of him and smiled, to accompany him in his dream. How cruel and despairing was this! That was why there were people who managed to break free from the art of fusing Tao, turning their entire lives into illusions, becoming fuel for the grand immortal realm's lost self. At the most critical moment of the art of fusing Tao, when the bubble burst, they seized that fleeting opportunity to sever their past, forcefully opening up a new path in the art of fusing Tao. They forcibly comprehended the Tao of illusion from the tragedy of their life. They broke free from their predetermined fate and transcended this dream. Using the theory that Zhuangzhou had no hometown during his cultivation, and because he had a fortuitous encounter in his early years, he was appreciated by Zhuangzhou. Using the dream butterfly magical ability that Zhuangzhou had imparted to him when he transformed into Dara's dream, he used Zhuangzhou to dream of a butterfly. The dream of Zhou is the butterfly? The dream of a butterfly is the principle of Zhou? He reversed reality and illusion. Instead, he turned the Tao fusion connate spiritual treasure into an illusion and turned himself into reality. He had proven his Tao to Dara in one go. He became one of the two top Dara cultivators who cultivated the Tao of illusion and reality. The original Dara, the police fairy, became Dara's accompanying numinous treasure. She had created the Tao seed technique based on her own experiences. This legendary Dara had finally obtained the guidance of Emperor Hua and Hutu. In the future, her achievements would be great. She was the exquisite Eight Sceneries' great Tao Lord, the Eight Sceneries' great heavenly venerate, who was surrounded by the heavens and adorned by the nine splendors. She was above the purple clouds, below the river of stars, her tail patrolling the heavens, her wings parting the dusk, and with a flip of her palm, she was able to control the movements of yin and yang, and the eight sceneries were all illusions. She used the connate numinous treasure, the great illusionary mirror, to open up the great illusionary land. The great illusionary land and the land of dreams were the only two spiritual worlds in the primordial world. If the land of dreams was a spiritual world of absolute freedom, it symbolized freedom that surpassed everything. Then the great illusionary land was a place of love, where all emotions belonged. One was so high that it was beyond the nine heavens, and the other was so low that it was in the dust, rolling in the mortal world. Comparing them, it was interesting. The Tao seed technique was the manifestation of her life experience, and it was also the high realization of the cultivation concept of borrowing the false to cultivate the true. The Tao seed technique was to borrow other people's path, to cultivate one's own Tao, borrow other people's money, and earn one's own capital. Fan Wujie did not understand the history of the Tao seed technique, and did not know the secret of the Tao seed technique at the level of Dara. He thought that the Khanate universe Great Tao was an empty Great Tao that no one had mastered, so he hastily cultivated the Khanate universe Great Tao, and cultivated the Tao seed technique into the Tao fusion technique. The most basic Tao seed art was to inscribe a seed of a great Tao into the primordial universe from nothing. The innate great Tao of time had always existed, and it was one of the 49 innate great Tao. What could Fan Wujie plant? Fan Wujie had changed his way of thinking. Using the unique characteristics of the innate cosmic light art, he planted himself in the innate cosmic great Tao of time, which was equivalent to walking down the path of Tao amalgamation. Of course, because of the unique characteristics of the innate cosmic great Tao of time, it was not impossible for him to succeed. Or rather, the innate time Tao that Dara didn't grasp was just too special. It was so special that the most important characteristic of Dara was the manifestation of the great Tao of time. It was so special that all the cultivation arts of Dara required the innate Tao of time. Fan Wujie turned himself into a seed of Tao, extending his existence up and down the timeline. When he reached the entire timeline, he would naturally be able to prove his Tao, Dara. This was a simple thing to say, but it was incredibly difficult to achieve. Compared to other methods of proving one's Tao, it was not easy at all. Dara and the others are here to scout. I'm afraid that they still don't dare to open the door to the end of time where Ro is sealed, because they're afraid that they'll die in the end of time. After all, it's normal for anyone to die in the end of time. Dara won't be able to escape the fate of death. Fan Wujie closed his eyes and analyzed calmly. So, after they've confirmed the situation here, they'll turn back and go to Dara Heaven. They'll plant the innate time Tao in Dara Heaven and turn it into a time vine. They'll bring the cannon fodder Tao Lords and the power of Dara Heaven here. And after I pass the point of my birth, I'll cease to exist. After all, they only want the innate Tao seed, not me. Fan Wujie said coldly. My only way to survive is to break into the sealed land and reach the end of time. There, I'll attack Dara. Fan Wujie sighed and said, So, is this what he wants? 3 poisons. I really can't see through you. Old Sly Fox, the leader of the demonic path, the indomitable Tao seeker, the spy of the righteous path, who is the real you? Or are you still the schemer that the lifeless sect leader described to me? Whether it's you or someone else, intentionally or not, I've been forced into a desperate situation. Is this your goal? To open the seal of Ro that leads to the end of time? Fan Wujie sighed and held on to the Yuantu sword talisman that Ajati gave him. He thought of Ajati's advice. The Yuantu sword energy slaughters all living beings. It's the symbol of the demonic path of slaughter, and it coincides with the Tao of slaughter of the immortal slaying sword formation. That's why it can activate the immortal slaying sword formation. But the Yuantu sword is not the immortal slaying sword. Using the Yuantu sword energy to activate the immortal slaying sword formation, the path to the future is not stable. It's not as good as the 4 replicas of the immortal slaying sword formation made by Shemali, and it's not as good as the sword talisman that comes from the 4 immortal slaying swords. You have to cut the chaos with this talisman, you have to be fast. The Shui Tu King said, You're just a Taoist lord. This is a good thing, but also a bad thing. The bad thing is that in front of any Dara, you can't fight back. The good thing is that with your strength, you can't attract the attention of Ro at all. Compared to those Dara, you're much safer. So after entering that time and space, you have to hide quickly and cover up the fact that you're from the past. I have a blood transformation talisman here. It can help you turn into a blood god and cover up your tracks. In the body of the candle dragon, Fan Wujie walked forward slowly, staring at the 5 Dara's observing eyes. He came to the front of the sword light and flicked his finger. An indescribable sword light seemed to wither all living beings in front of this sword light. It was an incomparably fierce, murderous aura that seemed to cut off all karma, all ties, all love and hate, all entanglements. This was a sword of heaven's will that could cut off all the disturbances in the untainted land, and it could kill all living beings in the untainted land. At this moment, the 5 Dara's expressions changed. Monk Wu Ming's eyes flickered, and he suddenly stepped forward to stop Spiritual Master Ziyang from attacking. Spiritual Master Ziyang's expression was as calm as still water, and he took 2 steps back. Shemali's expression was solemn, and he said in a low voice, Ajadi? The Tao Master of Corpse Demon's expression changed slightly, and he said in surprise, Yuentu's sword chi? Yuentu's sword chi triggered the sword light, and the 4 celestial execution swords moved slightly, cutting through the thin chaotic chi. It seemed that all the vital chi and matter at this time and time were occupied by this sword light, leaving only this thin layer of chaos. The end of time was originally the time and space where all existences were destroyed. It was not surprising that the chaotic chi was a little thin. Yuentu's sword chi caused the sword light to split open a fleeting gap, and Fan Wujie took the opportunity to turn into the universal light and entered the gap. The whole process was so smooth that it made him feel a little strange. The 4 celestial execution swords seemed to be a little too coordinated with Yuentu's sword chi. It was as if their original auras were very close and familiar. After entering the end of time and Rose Seal, Fan Wujie seemed to have gone crazy, and he triggered a trace of sword light, which was mixed with Yuentu's sword chi, and slashed at him. Fortunately, whether it was Yuentu's sword chi or the 4 celestial execution swords, they had long surpassed all vital chi changes, and directly reached the source, so the shadow that was slashed would not affect the body. Extremely precise. Fan Wujie picked up Yuentu's sword chi, and slashed at the chaotic chi in his sea of consciousness. It was a sealed memory. In an instant, the chaotic chi was split open. Fan Wujie instantly remembered this time, and all his memories. At the moment when the chaotic chi that was split open was about to close up, Fan Wujie endured the intense pain in his mind, and suddenly took a step out from his own time cycle, breaking free from the time cycle, great divine power, reincarnation. Fan Wujie resolutely gave up the body of the candle dragon that was most suitable for him, and in the short moment when his memory recovered, he used the great divine power of reincarnation to understand the blood transformation talisman that Xue Tu King had left for him, and instantly reincarnated into another species, as if he had reincarnated once in this world, and instantly disappeared without a trace. Dara and Avidya of the dragon race, who had sneaked in behind him, were instantly shocked, and completely lost track of Fan Wujie. And in the chaotic universe where the endless power of destruction and calamity surged in the void, an Azura demon was suddenly born, and instantly grew into an adult Azura in the Azura demon army, and blended into the crowd of demons, and attacked a world with strong source and extraordinary power. Now that the heavens were destroyed, Fan Wujie naturally had to reincarnate into the safest Azura demon crowd of this destructive era. Chapter 1285. Brothers, our time has come. Fan Wujie had just been reincarnated as an Azura when he fell into the devil army. He saw an Azura with 9 heads and 8 arms baring his fangs and roaring, "Kill your way into the heavens and plunder everything." Behind him, the Azura devil kings let out deafening roars, and some Azura generals beat the devil drum. The rumbling of the drum reverberated through the world. This demonic drum was formed from the tribulation power of destruction, and there were countless demon eyes on the surface of the drum, emitting beams of tribulation light of destruction that shot out in all directions, scorching everything. The beams of tribulation light shot out by the demon eyes pierced through the membranes of the worlds, destroying the structure and order of yin and yang. Wherever they went, all living beings died. On the surface of the drum, scenes of the destruction of the worlds were engraved. As the drum beat grew louder, these destroyed worlds turned into projections that appeared in the void with countless living beings who had died in the calamity, pouncing towards the surrounding world. The souls of countless living beings were plundered out of the cycle of reincarnation by the devil drum, and the laws of reincarnation of the worlds were cut off. The drum beat broke the cycle of reincarnation and plundered countless souls. The devil army that Fan Wujie was in was just an insignificant one among all the realms in the universe. Countless destructive demonic drums rang out from all directions of the Sea of Heaven's realms, converging into a monstrous drum formation. One of them was wrapped in black devil flames, with 1,000 heads and 1,000 faces. His 4 arms were filled with 1,000 eyes, and his lower body was made up of 9 scaleless snake tails that intertwined with each other. 4 giant hands covered all the stars, suns, and moons in the universe, and the great devil god who made the universe lose its light danced to the sound of the drum. The center of the realm sea became a dark and lightless star because of this great devil god. Ro! Fan Wujie cried out in fear. It was only when he saw this great devil god, who stood in the center of the universe, that he lost the ability to speak, for he could not describe such a great terror. In front of Dara, Fan Wujie was just an ant. But he still had the courage to fight back, and in front of this great devil god, he even lost the courage to fight back. Fan Wujie saw countless souls being dragged out from the reincarnation cycle by the drumming, and the Azura devils were fighting excitedly for these souls. They scooped up the water of the blood sea and splashed it in all directions. When the water of the blood sea touched the souls that heard the drumming, their souls started to distort, and one Azura devil after another were born from the blood sea, joining the devil army. Only then did Fan Wujie understand why he could easily blend into the devil army. As it turned out, Rahu was constantly twisting souls and transforming them into Azuras. Fan Wujie had seen with his own eyes that among these souls, there were many Tao monarchs and heaven immortals who stood at the pinnacle of the heavens. They were exposed to the sound of the drums, but they could only wail and scream, twisting and demonizing in extreme pain. Fan Wujie had seen with his own eyes how all living beings had fallen into depravity, how devils had wreaked havoc, and how all living beings had been slaughtered during the doomsday tribulation. Great sorrow, great despair, great terror, indescribable terror, despair, depravity, and the aura of doomsday, accompanied by wails, roars, curses, and the beating of the devil drum of destruction, resounded through the entire universe. This intense devilish nature tainted everything. In this doomsday aura, anyone who tried to comprehend the heavenly Tao and cultivate would be distorted by the heavenly Tao. They would wither and die, and the aura would corrupt them, turning them into demons. Fan Wujie's heart of righteousness, which had persisted for a long time, was crushed by this terrifying scene of the end of the universe, where all kinds of demons were dancing in a frenzy. As Ro demon ancestor danced wildly, the first ear-piercing sound of the copper drum of destruction began to appear in the midst of the drumming. Within the drum formation of the devil drum of destruction, the first sound of the copper drum of doomsday guided the countless twisted souls, reincarnation. They used the original law of reincarnation to infuse these souls that had been contaminated by the tribulation of destruction into those worlds. Using the law of reincarnation, which was the unity of heaven and man, and the great cycle of reincarnation, the poisonous souls that had been distorted and demonized by the sound of the devil drum of destruction were reincarnated into the myriad of worlds. It bypassed the weak defensive instincts of the world, as if it had been swallowed a mouthful of poison. Fan Wujie's hair stood on end, and he broke out in a cold sweat. The 9 questions of the netherworld. It was definitely the 9 questions of the netherworld. The destructive suite of Ro demon ancestor had definitely incorporated the power of the river Styx demon ancestor's 9 questions of the netherworld. The sound of the devil drum cut off reincarnation, twisting the souls of all living beings and demonizing them. The sound of the copper drum usurped reincarnation, using all living beings as poison, and corrupting the world. From within, Fan Wujie could see the shadow of his own great divine ability, the cycle of reincarnation. But compared to Ro demon ancestors' peerless divine ability, which could cut off reincarnation, corrupt all living beings, and then forcefully reincarnate the poison of all living beings into the cycle of reincarnation, demonizing the myriad of worlds, the little bit of knowledge Fan Wujie had gained was like a joke. Countless wriggling tentacles grew out of the remaining membrane of the myriad of worlds. These tentacles wriggled and wriggled, constantly piercing into the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas within the world, injecting one flesh egg after another. The tentacles danced about within the world, injecting one twisted soul after another into the space, the earth, and the sky. More and more places within the world that had been corrupted, and the flesh eggs laid by the tentacles were densely packed, arranged in rows. One after another, the twisted and rotten devils emerged from the trees, from the bodies of the remaining living beings in the world, from the mountains, from the clouds, from all the phenomena of nature, and from the substances of living beings. Finally, accompanied by the ear-piercing, monotonous sound of a flute that made one irritated, the brass pipes and the demonic drums rang out in unison, accompanied by the sound of the flute. It was a frenzied, irritating, and demonic ensemble. Then came the swona, the pipa, and the flute. It was as if they were sending off the entire universe. Countless Asura devils, the twisted devils within the world, the devil disciples of destruction, and the devils who had cultivated the devil path of destruction, who had now gone completely mad, charged towards every surviving world in the myriad of worlds. They wantonly slaughtered all the living beings they saw, reveling in the wreckage of the world, celebrating the era that belonged to them. The era of destruction. Fan Wujie hid among the devils, his body trembling slightly. He had finally seen the era that the Asura clan had been painstakingly pursuing. Suddenly, the thought of eradicating all Asuras rose in his mind. Such a race should not live in the primitive universe. They only deserved to live in hell. Fan Wujie had never had such a clear understanding of the fact that the righteous and the devilish could not coexist. He saw all the living beings in the myriad of worlds rising up, the Taoist lords and sect masters coming out from their secluded cultivation, the ancient races, and the old monsters who had been living in seclusion appeared one after another. For the sake of survival, he saw that while the Asura devils were wreaking havoc, the countless living beings still rose up and fought back, setting off the sad song of the apocalypse. Fan Wujie even felt a little resentful. He wanted to ask, what about those great experts? What about those Dara, who were not even ants? What about those legendary, incomparably powerful, and incomparably proud ancient experts? What about the heaven and underworld? What about the gods and celestial venerables? Fan Wujie raised his head and looked at the darkness where Ro was dancing wildly, and there seemed to be a faint tremor coming from it. He could not see through the darkness formed by Ro, but if he could see that there were hundreds of Dara fighting against Ro in that darkness, all of them attacking together, they had beaten that darkness into a chaos where time and space no longer existed. Ro wielded the four immortal slaying swords, and sword light rose up to block off the river of time and space as she attacked the Dara. She was incomparably agile, and with just a raise of her hand she killed one Dara. As the devil tribulation reached its climax, as the slaughter and destruction in the myriad of worlds in the universe reached a peak, the tribulation power of destruction in the celestial realm turned into a highly concentrated tribulation of destruction. It turned into the tribulation of destruction of the heavens, the tribulation of destruction of all techniques, the tribulation of destruction of vital energy, the tribulation of material void, the tribulation of decay of the universe, the tribulation of liberation of the void, the tribulation of destruction of all living beings, the tribulation of destruction of reality and illusion, the tribulation of decay of the blood sea, the tribulation of dusk of the gods. countless tribulation of destruction raged above the celestial realm sea. The vital energy of destruction turned into all kinds of strange natural origin forces, the divine lightning of destruction, the astral wind of destruction, the heavenly fire of destruction. Finally, the myriad of worlds in the universe fell together, falling to the bottom of the celestial realm sea, forming an unimaginably terrifying whirlpool. At this time, the tribulation power of destruction formed the scene of billions of tribulations exploding at the same time. The foundation of the myriad Daos in the universe was destroyed at the same time. The myriad Daos returned to nothingness. All laws and principles were destroyed. Destruction was no longer the great Tao, it was no longer traceable, it could no longer be controlled and controlled. When the heavenly Tao collapsed, the final Tao was solved, and the myriad Daos returned to nothingness. The tribulation of destruction was finally destroyed along with the great Tao of destruction. From then on, destruction could no longer be controlled. When destruction reached its peak, it would destroy the great Tao of destruction that bound itself and formed itself. All divine abilities and techniques, all laws would be destroyed. The foundation of the existence of Taiji would be completely shaken. When the Azura demon horde discovered that they had lost the ability to control the tribulation power of destruction, they were immediately devoured by the tribulation of destruction. Brahma Wu Jia didn't dare to continue observing. The secret of the final Tao, the end of time, and the end of the universe, the less people knew, the better. There were indeed unimaginable mysteries of the great Tao, including the heavenly Tao and the process of the destruction of the great Tao itself, the ultimate secret that even the Tao would decay and be destroyed. But knowing this secret, didn't that mean that they didn't want to live in the Taiji era anymore? Now that Ro knew the secret of the final Tao of destruction, what would happen to her? Could he, Brahma Wu Jia, be more powerful than Ro? Brahma Wu Jia felt that countless tribulations that could turn him into ashes had brushed past his shoulders. He finally understood a despairing truth. It wasn't that he didn't face tribulations when he became Dara, but the tribulations he faced were greater than any other tribulations. He had to survive the end of time, to survive until the moment when everything ended, to live until the end of the universe. In this era of destruction, as the end of time approached, Brahma Wu Jia had become countless times stronger, as if he had been tempered countless times by the tribulation of destruction. Now, he felt that he was only one step away from becoming Dara, but this one step was like a heavenly moat. Brahma Wu Jia turned around and saw Ro. Ro held the 4 immortal slaying swords in her hands, and the 4 swords were held in her 4 arms, facing the void in all 4 directions. At this time, Brahma Wu Jia realized that Ro seemed to be struggling. That's not right. Brahma Wu Jia suddenly realized that something was wrong. Ro wasn't controlling the 4 immortal slaying swords, but the 4 immortal slaying swords were controlling Ro, and the 4 immortal slaying swords were controlling Demon Ancestor, who was transforming into the demon god of destruction. An unimaginably terrifying demonic shadow that carried the 4 immortal slaying swords was growing and transforming with Ro as nourishment. It was now Ro's shadow. But in reality, it was Ro who was transforming into his shadow. It was just a reversal, and that terrifying demonic shadow, the demon god of destruction, was born out of nowhere. River Styx and Numinous Treasure stood at the end of time, watching the demon god of destruction that was born and could suppress all existences. River Styx bowed slightly to Numinous Treasure and said, "Fellow Taoist, please make your move." Great Heavenly Lord Numinous Treasure bowed slightly, and the 4 immortal slaying swords lit up with sword light that swept across the entire universe, slaughtering all the hiding Dara in the universe. River Styx shook his hand, and the outer perimeter of the ultimate at the bottom of the heavens realm sea was incomparably powerful, much more powerful than what Brahma Wu Jia had ever seen. Like a millstone, a huge whirlpool of destruction swallowed all existences and enveloped them. The sword light of the 4 immortal slaying swords shattered all troublesome rocks, and the huge whirlpool of the ultimate obliterated everything. The four immortal slaying swords worked together with the immortal slaying sword formation and the demon god of destruction to completely destroy the universe. Everything returned to nothingness, and Taiji returned to Wuji. The embryonic form of Wuji in the deepest part of the ultimate finally matured, and the opposing situation between Taiji and Wuji was finally overturned. Wuji contained Taiji, and the universe returned to its original state. Destruction returned to nothingness. The karma of this Pengu era is set. River Styx merged the ultimate, the immortal slaying sword formation into Wuji, and waited for the arrival of the Tai era. He then said to the group of Dara's innate inextinguishable spirit aura, "All of you, wait patiently for the next time Pengu splits the heavens. When the time comes, we will fight for Pengu again, and create another universe." The 3,000 innate inextinguishable spirit aura nodded slightly at the few great mediums, and then escaped into the Tai era of the next universe. At the very last moment, Brahma Wu Jie finally realized that he could not reach the end of time, because everything at the end of time no longer existed. He was lucky enough to live through the era of Ro's rampage, but he could never live through the era when Ro transformed into the demon god of destruction, and even Ro herself was destroyed. Therefore, Brahma Wu Jie escaped at the last moment. With the help of Yuantu's sword aura and the four immortal slaying swords, he escaped from that era. Even now, he was still afraid. Ro demon ancestor was just a puppet in the end, just a nourishment for the birth of the real demon god of destruction. The four immortal slaying swords hid an unimaginable terror, and the real demon god of destruction might be living on the four immortal slaying swords. Even the great mediums of chaos were fooled. Ro was just a pawn. Brahma Wu Jie shuddered as he recalled the moment when the demon shadow was born. The demon corpse Tao Master and the others wanted to covet the four immortal slaying swords. This was even more suicidal than I thought. They were courting death. Why was I able to escape from that era with the help of the four immortal slaying swords? The destruction of the universe that I saw, was there some conspiracy behind it? Why did I witness all of this with my own eyes? Brahma Wu Jie didn't dare to think too deeply. He looked at his innate time-light Tao seed. It was no longer a seed. Instead, it was a budding sprout. Although it hadn't reached the true end of time, in the final enlightenment, when the realm sea in the endless appeared, the Tao seed still absorbed a sliver of power from the core of the endless and successfully sprouted. At this time, Brahma Wu Jie felt that the more he went upstream, the more the time-light vine would grow until he reached the starting point of time. The Tao seed would completely mature. He would connect Brahma Wu Jie's existence through the timeline, witness the heaven of Dara, and begin to prove the Tao of Dara. After the tempering of the universe's destruction, Brahma Wu Jie had reached a realm that was only a thin piece of paper away from Dara. He only needed to poke through that layer of paper. As he went upstream, the realm that he obtained in the future time would slowly regress, returning to the corresponding strength at the point of time upstream. But the time-light Tao seed that had already sprouted would not regress. In other words, a part of Brahma Wu Jie's existence had already started to touch the characteristics of Dara. It was not limited by time, and the realm would never regress. This meant that Brahma Wu Jie could really go upstream in time before he was born. At this time, Brahma Wu Jie finally got a glimpse of the reverse reincarnation 9 questions. This question should be related to the changes and unchanging of reincarnation, the relationship between the unchanging of Dara and the changes of reincarnation. It was a heaven-defying divine art that could be used to cultivate a trace of the characteristics of Dara. This involved the direction of the changes of reincarnation, the boundary, the relationship between the innate inextinguishable spirit light of Dara and reincarnation. It involved the reversal of time and cause and effect. Brahma Wu Jie still hadn't completely understood this question. He had only solved the homogeneity of this question, or rather, the weak conjecture of the river Styx's 9 questions of Hell's 9 questions. It was a question that was contained in this question. Could reincarnation be reversed? This was the problem that the reverse reincarnation involved, challenging the laws of reincarnation. Brahma Wu Jie hurriedly went back along the timeline. Before the few Dara returned, he pretended that nothing had happened. He colluded with the Shui Tu king, Ajati, and Zhengyang Zi, lent them the time light vine, and obtained a trace of the characteristics of Dara. Brahma Wu Jie also understood the relationship between the innate time Tao, the heaven of Dara, and the Tao proving Dara. Dara had a portion of the characteristics of Dara. If one walked along the innate time Tao, he would be able to obtain a portion of the characteristics of Dara. The characteristic of one's realm and power never regress. This characteristic was extremely important to Tao monarchs like them who were trying to prove their Tao to Dara. And because of the innate time Tao seed, Brahma Wu Jie was the easiest to cultivate this characteristic. He could also help other Tao monarchs who were at the final step to take this step. Only by obtaining this characteristic could one go to the heaven of Dara. And the heaven of Dara was the appearance of the Dara realm in the exterior realm. Only Dara could completely enter the heaven of Dara. Similarly, to completely enter the heaven of Dara, one had to wait to prove their Tao to Dara. The important thing about the heaven of Dara was not itself, but the process of approaching it. It was equivalent to pointing out a direction for all Tao monarchs, which was equivalent to exposing the secret of the Dara realm. When Tao monarchs discovered the heaven of Dara, in the process of finding a way to enter the heaven of Dara, they would gradually understand the direction of entering the heaven of Dara. Then, they would cultivate in that direction. Entering the heaven of Dara was equivalent to proving their Tao. Brahma Wu Jie understood the reason why Tao monarch Shui Tu and the others were looking for the heaven of Dara. Just like this time, they solved the problem of their existence in the timeline and took the first step to obtain the characteristics of Dara. Searching for the heaven of Dara was to them the direction and the goal of their cultivation. Chapter 1286. In the loneliness and emptiness of the end of time, as Ro danced wildly and the great dark star covered the heavens, a figure stood in the middle of the impenetrable darkness. He walked out from the depths of time and space, slowly walking toward Ro. Rumble! Amidst the chaotic and demonic sounds of the drum of destruction, the doomsday copper pot, the flute of solitude, and the funeral swona, the person slowly walked out of the chaos. However, what protected him from the chaos was not the immortal slaying sword talisman, nor was it the replicas of the 4 immortal slaying swords. Instead, it was a small bell that looked like a bell. The sound of the bell protected the person as he passed through the chaos. This is the sound of the bell of chaos. On top of Ro's wildly dancing demonic body, his demonic consciousness slowly opened his eyes and said, "An ox knows from the mystic door's righteous path, holding the sound of the bell of chaos and coming to the end of time to see me. What an interesting combination," Rose said with a smile. "The demon ancestor is about to perish, yet you can still smile?" The person was a follower of the mystic door. He wore an imperial robe and a crown, and he did not show the slightest bit of respect to Ro. "Not bad, you've crossed the threshold of the great mediums." Ro did not mind and commented on him. "I see many traces of acquaintances on you. River Styx, 3 pure ones, Gautama Buddha, and that old fellow Tai. He even borrowed the power of your bell of chaos, but don't think that you can criticize me just because you have the chance to use the bell of chaos." Ro slightly raised the immortal slaying sword in her hand, forcing the person to take a few steps back and place himself in the protection of the chaos. "You're still far from it." After Ro finished speaking, the 4 swords moved slightly, a shocking sword energy, crossed all the barriers of time and space and locked onto that person. That person was extremely nervous. The chaotic-colored small bell in his hand vibrated repeatedly, making a half-illusory bell sound that suppressed the entire chaos. When that bell sound rang, that person was wrapped up and escaped from the Zhu Xian 4 swords lock. Although the small bell only had the power of one strike of the true bell of chaos, Ro only needed to use a little power to break free from the lock of the 4 immortal vanquishing swords. That person knew that even though Ro was currently in the middle of the apocalyptic berserk dance, and was unable to use the true power of the 4 immortal execution swords and her full strength. However, if the true immortal vanquishing swords slashed down, it would be difficult for him to escape unless he really used the Bell of Chaos. He had to use the Bell of Chaos at a critical moment. If he used it here, his plan would be greatly affected. That person hurriedly said, "Demon Ancestor and Patriarch River Styx are equally famous, but now, Patriarch River Styx is leading the demonic Tao while Demon Ancestor can only be trapped here. Are you satisfied? What's the use of saying that? Do you think you can save me?" Rose sneered. "I'm not capable enough. It's difficult for me to save Demon Ancestor." That person said lightly. Ro roared, "Then what the hell are you talking about? Although I'm not very capable, it doesn't mean that the person behind me is the same." That person saw that Ro had a bad temper and frankly stated his intentions. "I'm here to give Demon Ancestor a great opportunity. According to what I know, when the primordial world shattered, Patriarch River Styx plotted against Demon Ancestor and lured you onto the great Tao of destruction, making you the public enemy of all the powerful beings and the 3,000 Dara. He used this opportunity to seize the power of the demonic Tao. However, Patriarch River Styx was also afraid that Demon Ancestor had obtained the primordial world's great Tao of destruction when the primordial world shattered. Demon Ancestor's cultivation improved by leaps and bounds and was even above him. Therefore, before the primordial world was destroyed, he sealed Demon Ancestor, causing Demon Ancestor's great Tao of destruction to not be perfected through the primordial world's great Tao of destruction. He lacked a portion of power. I'm here to help Demon Ancestor complete this Tao. You're here to help me perfect the great Tao of destruction in advance." Rose said in surprise, "Do you know that once my great Tao of destruction is perfected and seizes the great Tao of destruction from the primordial world's destruction, the time of perfection will be greatly brought forward. And the time when my great Tao of destruction is perfected will be the time when the universe is destroyed, the time when the Tao ends." "You actually want to help me destroy this universe in advance? This is becoming enemies with all the Dara in the primordial world and many powerful beings. Do you have the guts?" That person said nonchalantly, "It's nothing more than the next Pangu era being brought forward. What harm will it do to Dara if the universe's destruction is brought forward? So many Pangu eras have come. Did I touch their fundamental interests by bringing forward the universe's destruction? How is this considered making enemies of the entire world? If that was really the case, wouldn't Demon Ancestor have long been dismembered and suppressed by them? Suppressing Demon Ancestor can at least extend the universe's time by 1/10, right?" Rose sneered and said, "They know that they have schemed against me and that they have let me down. They know that they are in the wrong, so they don't dare to go too far. The great Tao of destruction's destruction of the universe is not because of me. I am just an effect. The great Tao of destruction is an external cause. In the process of the universe's development, it constantly accumulates internal causes that lead to the destruction. Internal causes lead to external causes, causing the great Tao of destruction set by Pangu to gradually become stronger. After the external cause matured, in order to prevent the great Tao of destruction from losing control in the process of destroying the universe, the designer of the great circulation of the universe, River Styx, tricked me into filling the pit of the great Tao of destruction. He tricked me into transforming into the destruction demon god, providing insurance for the great Tao of destruction." That person praised, "So the designer of the great Tao of destruction is Patriarch River Styx. Patriarch River Styx really hid it well. No wonder he could use the ruins of destruction to imprison Demon Ancestor. Back then, I was tricked by him. When he and numinous treasure waited for me with the 4 immortal slaying swords, I was as shocked as you are. Ro's expression was uncertain. Back then, numinous treasure's incarnation tricked me into refining the 4 immortal slaying swords for him. To think that I actually believed that the embryonic forms of the 4 killing swords were the sword souls that he condensed when he slaughtered 3,000 chaos godfiends. In the end, I painstakingly refined the sword souls into 4 peerless killing swords, but he used me to settle the remaining chaos godfiends and set off the great immortal slaying tribulation. In the end, he even turned against me and snatched away the 4 immortal slaying swords that I painstakingly refined. And that bastard Duobao is just like his master, rotten to the core. Ro's expression was distorted, as if she had recalled some unbearable past. The 4 immortal slaying swords were actually refined by great heavenly Lord numinous treasure through demon ancestors' hands. The man's expression changed slightly when he heard this great secret, as if something unexpected had happened. He asked in a low voice, "Aren't the 4 immortal slaying swords still in demon ancestors' hands?" Ro's expression darkened. The 4 immortal slaying swords are too closely related to the great Tao of destruction. He used me to nurture the swords and temporarily left them with me. When he needs to use them, he can use them at any time. When he doesn't, he will leave them with me. On one hand, it will prevent the great Tao of destruction from contaminating his numinous treasure's path of destruction. On the other hand, it will avoid the great karma of the 4 immortal slaying swords. There were some things that Luo Ho did not mention. In the model of the great circulation of the untainted land, the great path of destruction was a necessary part of the great path of destruction. However, this was a dirty job. Originally, the Netherworld River and the numinous treasure were fighting for the end of untainted land. The great path of destruction was bound to fall into the hands of one of them, and that person had to bear the karma of destroying the world. In the end, neither of them wanted to dirty their hands. Thus, they refined the great Tao of destruction into the 4 immortal slaying swords and used this numinous treasure to carry out the karma on their behalf. However, the 4 immortal slaying swords could not bear this karma. Thus, before the great heavenly lord of numinous treasure split the sky, he planned to let this treasure fall into Ro's hands. Then, River Styx would act and force Ro to prove her Tao as the destruction demon god. It was equivalent to finding someone to take the blame. The two tacitly worked together to divide the power of destruction and used Ro, the Black Hand, to not dirty their own hands. It could be said that the plan was exquisite, but the price was that the 4 immortal slaying swords and Ro had a great karma. After all, there would always be someone who would wield the sword to destroy the world. What Ro did not know was that these 2 evil fellows not only split the number 1 acquired killing treasure into 2 parts, but only gave 1 part to Ro. They also sealed him so that he could not discover this. In other words, the 2 scumbags fancied a beauty but did not want to marry her. Thus, they worked together to maintain a certain beauty, the great Tao of destruction. This transaction was to control the great Tao of destruction through the 4 immortal slaying swords. However, a certain woman had to get married, so they found a certain honest man, Ro, to be the marriage partner of the great Tao of destruction. However, they did not want the beauty to be with Ro. They only wanted Ro to help them raise the woman. Thus, they locked up Ro and threw him a marriage certificate. Then, they found another place to settle the beauty. Ro hugged the marriage certificate, the 4 immortal slaying swords, while the 2 scumbags hugged the beauty, the diagram of the immortal slaying formation. The honest man did not even know what the beauty looked like. He hugged the marriage certificate and thought that he had taken over. However, in reality, he had not even touched the hands of the beauty, the true controller of the great Tao of destruction. Now, Ro thought that he was the legitimate husband of the beauty. Others also thought that he was the husband of the beauty. He had taken all the responsibilities, but all the benefits fell into the hands of River Styx and Ling Bao. However, Ro was still kept in the dark. She thought that the reason why she did not take advantage of the beauty was that she did not undo the button. However, in fact, the button was in someone else's arms. Whoever knew about this would die. A certain Poya Azura king knew something was wrong. Seeing the green hat on Ro's head, he was about to find a chance to secretly remind his boss. However, he was killed by river Styx. Ling Bao also helped to cover up the crime scene. The person who colluded with Ro did not know what was going on. Otherwise, he would not have escaped from the two adulterers. Someone did not know that he had a brush with being killed. He did not know that the 4 immortal slaying swords hid such a shocking secret. He only cared about whether Ro could use the 4 immortal slaying swords or not. Seeing that Luo Ho was finally tempted, the man finally came closer. The chaos dissipated, revealing his face. It was Reverend Ziyang, who had come along with Fan Wujie and the others. Reverend Ziyang had the air of a celestial being, his long beard was elegant, and he looked like an upright gentleman. Despite his righteous appearance, he stood in the center of the darkness of the universe, conversing with the world-destroying fiend god. Perfected Ziyang said, "If the fiend ancestor can still use the 4 immortal vanquishing swords when the primordial world shatters, he can use the opportunity of the primordial world shattering to let the 4 immortal vanquishing swords shatter the primordial world and draw the power of destruction. Can the fiend ancestor obtain that portion of the tribulation power of destruction? Could he use this opportunity to complete the great Tao of destruction in advance? That's impossible. When I swung that sword, someone in the river of time would have stopped it. Then why was the chaos destroyed?" Spiritual Master Ziyang asked. "I was already sealed at that time." Ro's tone was unfriendly. "How would I know why the chaos was destroyed? Aside from the pre-celestial treasure of destruction, what other treasures can destroy the chaos?" Spiritual Master Ziyang clasped his hands behind his back. "No one knows why the chaos was destroyed. Why couldn't it have been destroyed by the 4 immortal slaying swords?" "I already said the 4 immortal slaying swords can't." "No." Ro looked up at Spiritual Master Ziyang. "The person behind you is Tai, the Bell of Chaos." "I know. You want the Bell of Chaos and the 4 immortal slaying swords to work together to destroy the chaos. The pre-celestial treasure of destruction and the pre-celestial treasure of destruction. If they can't destroy the chaos, what else can? In the past, it was always the great practitioners who destroyed the chaos, but this time, it's such a big scene." Ro was shocked. Spiritual Master Ziyang said, "With the Bell of Chaos, no one can stop you on the river of time." "No. Tai is the god of the pre-celestial beings, the innate celestial emperor who founded the imperishable divine court. The destruction of the chaos was the most detrimental to his interests. After the chaos was destroyed, the pre-celestial beings no longer existed, and all the powerful pre-celestial beings who fought with the humans lost the environment they needed to grow. He was the key to the prosperity of the human race. Why would Tai destroy the chaos?" Ro was puzzled. "Because if you don't occupy it, it will be occupied by the enemy." Spiritual Master Ziyang said, "The Divine Emperor of Tai changed his mind and decided to carry out the monster plan. With the strength of the human race, he will unite all living beings except for the human race. The Tai Divine Court will rule from the pre-celestial to the post-celestial. From then on, the post-celestial will no longer be the human race's territory. The human race is too overbearing. The human race's tyranny is also to nurture enemies for themselves, to provide a strong foundation for the divine court. Humans degrade all living beings except them as monsters. With the human race's hegemony, the concept of monster came into being. The arrogant human race created their greatest enemy with their own hands. The human race is tyrannical, and all living beings have suffered for a long time. Now that the connection between the pre-celestial beings and post-celestial beings has been established by the human race, The pre-celestial beings will be the ancestors of post-celestial beings. They will be connected through their bloodlines, and through the evolutionary rules established by ancestor River Styx with the Avicii sword. The post-celestial beings respect the pre-celestial ancestors, and the post-celestial beings are distinguished by their bloodlines. The pre-celestial beings respect the pre-celestial gods, and the pre-celestial gods established the Tai divine court. This is a system of bloodline transmission, evolution, and hierarchy. From now on, the monster race respects bloodlines. Any monster who cultivates is returning to their ancestors, providing fresh blood for the pre-celestial beings. Ancestor River Styx can also take this opportunity to promote his evolutionary method. He will integrate the Avicii sword's evolutionary method into the monster race's cultivation civilization. So you think River Styx will support you? Rose sneered. Of course I don't dare to be so bold as to think that Ancestor River Styx will support me, but at least he won't oppose me. Spiritual Master Zi Yang said confidently, the opportunity to unify all the races in the universe, except for the human race, has been born. Now, in the universe, whether it's human or monster, we have succeeded. So the Tai God has changed his attitude toward the destruction of the primordial universe. He is no longer trying to stop the destruction of the primordial universe, but he wants to see who will destroy it. Spiritual Master Zi Yang said, if the untainted land is destroyed in our hands, then the entire structure of the universe in the future will be planned by us. At that time, how many worlds in the universe are suitable for the demon clan and how many worlds are suitable for the human clan will be decided by us. When the war between humans and monsters comes, and after we subdue the human race, the divine court will be re-established, and the universe will be unified. That will be a glorious era. Spiritual Master Zi Yang said excitedly. Rose said after a long time, if I'm not wrong, you seem to be a human. Do you think I'm on the side of the monster race? Spiritual Master Zi Yang sneered and said, I'm not on the side of the human race, nor on the side of the bloody monster race. I'm on the side of the divine court, on the side of the innate gods. The heavenly court rules the primordial universe, regulates yin and yang like the heavenly Tao, and controls all living beings. It shouldn't be the private property of a single family or clan. The Emperor of Heaven rules the heavenly Tao with the human race, and uses the human race to override the heavenly Tao. This is already going against the law, and there will be unwarranted disasters. We are gods, and we are fair, above all living beings, and rule everything equally. However, the Emperor of Heaven only cares about the human race, and he can't see the resentment of all living beings under his partiality. The Emperor of Heaven has lost his virtue. He always remembers that he is a human, and he doesn't look like an Emperor of Heaven. Emperor Zi Yang's eyes were sharp, and he looked around with indifference and ruthlessness. The Emperor of Heaven rules the world on behalf of the heavenly Tao, and he should treat all living beings as dogs. The great Tao is invisible, but it gives birth to heaven and earth. The great Tao is emotionless, but it runs the sun and the moon. The great Tao is nameless, but it nourishes all living beings. How can he be a good God with a human heart? How can he be a good ruler of the primordial universe? The Tai Divine Court is the heavenly court of the innate gods, and they can be impartial and treat everything equally. The Tai Divine Court is not equal. Rose said coldly, the ancient gods are high above us, and those who are close to them get good, and those who betray them get evil. They are the most selfish gods. The Emperor of Heaven declared war on the ancient gods for the human race, for the post-celestial beings. How fearless and courageous he is! But what happened after the Emperor of Heaven ruled the world? The post-celestial beings who chose to follow the human race to resist the ancient gods, why did they resist the human race like they did to the ancient gods? The celestial Dharch had just become another Tai. The human race just became another race of ancient gods. Perfected Ziyang spread his hands and asked. At least the ancient gods ruled the primordial world with their own will. As for the Emperor of Heaven, the heavenly court, as the supreme authority that ruled the primordial world, they actually submitted to the will of the human race. They are even more ridiculous and stupid than the ancient gods. The Emperor of Heaven should only be loyal to himself. The heavenly court should only rule the primordial world for its own interests. It should not be the private property of a race or a religion. Rose said calmly, if I heard correctly, you don't want the heavenly court to be the private property of the human race because you hope that the Emperor of Heaven and the heavenly court are above everything else and let the primordial world become the private property of the heavenly court. Perfected Ziyang smiled and said, is that wrong? Rose said calmly, you haven't experienced the history of the ancient gods ruling the primordial world. These are just your nonsense. Have you ever thought that the postnatal lifeforms outside of the human race have condensed into the demon race and colluded with the ancient gods to overthrow the rule of the human race? It's not because the rule of the human race is no different from that of the ancient gods, but because all living beings are forgetful. They have forgotten the history of the ancient gods' rule. They have forgotten the past? Perfected Ziyang said indifferently, what's the difference? Rose shook her head slowly and said, so you are not really doing it for all living beings. You are just an ambitious person. You are not as good as the Emperor of Heaven. No, no, no. You are not worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as the Emperor of Heaven. You do not understand the breadth of mind of the Emperor of Heaven at all. Ah! Ziyang laughed and said, Ro, demon ancestor, are you advising me? Even if I am an ambitious person and cause chaos in the universe and set off endless calamities, what does this have to do with you? Isn't this what you want? Ro also laughed and said, yes. What does this have to do with me? Kid, I agree to your matter. When the time is right, I will make my move. The bell of chaos will ring, and the immortal slaying sword will appear. The world will be bathed in blood, and the heavens will face a great calamity. The heavenly court will be destroyed, and the primordial world will be shattered. When the bell of chaos rings and shakes time and space, I will do as you wish and attack the heavenly court. But kid, I want to tell you, if you think that everyone will stand by and do nothing, then you have miscalculated. You think that the fall of the Emperor of Heaven and your actions of usurping the throne have nothing to do with the great divines of the related parties. They will at least look on coldly from the sidelines. But I know that there is one person who is definitely beyond your expectations. Get lost, kid. Rose's demonic thoughts closed her eyes and slowly faded away. Although I hate the Emperor of Heaven, I hate you even more. Perfected Ziyang put on a smile that made Ro feel disgusted. He bowed slightly and turned to disappear into the chaos. Chapter 1287. Fan Wujie walked back from the end of time. The Candle Dragon's innate godly body had degenerated, and all the power he had obtained in the future had retreated as well. Only the part of the power that could never regress was left, and along with the two great techniques of reincarnation and reincarnation, the river of time reincarnation, they turned into chaos and disappeared from Fan Wujie's body. He had returned to his original state, feeling the emptiness in his body after the power retreated, the endless mysteries of the great Tao and the understanding also retreated from his consciousness. Fan Wujie felt an emptiness that he had never felt before. After his originally solid foundation of Tao had retreated, even the characteristic of Dara and the vine of time in his body had become illusory and wavered. Obtaining the power of the future is not without its hidden dangers. Comprehending and cultivating on the foundation of Tao in the future is equivalent to overdrafting my future potential. Not only will my foundation be shaken after the power of the future fades away, it is also not good for my future cultivation. After experiencing the power of the future, although it has pointed out the direction of my cultivation, it has also hindered my knowledge. If I want to walk a different path from the future, it will be even more difficult. Fan Wujie sighed softly and said, "The future is poisonous. The great techniques of reincarnation and the river of time reincarnation are indeed powerful, but if I did not experience the future, I might be able to improve on the foundation of the 9 questions of the netherworld and the seed of time Tao, and comprehend even more powerful technique. But now it is very difficult for me to do so." Fan Wujie sensed that all his knowledge and memories regarding these 2 great divine abilities had completely faded away, but he also had a faint feeling that when he tried to comprehend these 2 great divine abilities in the future, it would definitely help him a step further, and success would come naturally when the conditions were right. But at the same time, this feeling was also a kind of restriction. If he wanted to comprehend other different techniques from the 9 questions of the netherworld and the seed of time Tao, there would be an indescribable barrier. It was like after looking at the reference answer, it was very difficult to break through the reference answer and think of a new solution. In other words, it was a hindrance in knowledge. "You are back." The Shui-Tu King stared at them with a pair of bloodshot eyes, causing Fan Wujie's heart to tremble. Now, Fan Wujie could finally see some clues from their bodies. The 3 people worth paying attention to in the Devil Path, Shui-Tu King, Ajati, and the Righteous Path spy, Xingyang, were all far stronger than him. Perhaps only when Fan Wujie reached the end of time and stood at the pinnacle of the future could he compare. In other words, if Fan Wujie did not seize this opportunity to prove his Tao, even if he cultivated to the end of the universe, the end of time, cultivated the innate divine body of the candle dragon, and cultivated the great divine power of reincarnation, he would only be able to be mentioned in the same breath as them. Fan Wujie had the time light seed of Tao, the Shui-Tu King also had the secret trump card of the Blood Sea, and Ajati also had the Yuan-Tu sword aura. Zhengyangzi still could not see through them. "You have already obtained a bit of Dara's characteristics. You have a little bit of the unchanging and unchanging time light." Ajati also looked at Fan Wujie and said, "Your time light seed of Tao has already sprouted. It is enough for you to understand the characteristics of Dara." Fan Wujie said in a low voice, "You better hurry up, Spiritual Master Ziyang and the others will soon see the seal and come over to us." Spiritual Master Ziyang and the others, these Dara's plan is very scary. The Shui-Tu King followed beside Fan Wujie, turned himself into a fruit on the time light vine, and quickly ripened and fell. After this, his Tao fruit quickly obtained the characteristics of Dara, and he obtained a bit of the unchanging state. Ajati also went through this, and obtained the characteristics of Dara, and at the same time, he agreed, "Our ambition is already very scary. We are already very daring. Those who dare to come here, all want to do something big. But no matter how big the thing we do, it is not as big as Dara. Compared to Dara, our little plan is not even worth their attention. There must be someone in Dara who is colluding with Ro." Yuan Yu slowly walked out of the chaos, "But I do not know who it is. It could be my senior brother or it could be the Tao Master of Demon Corpse Tao. The Tao Master of Demon Corpse Tao is going crazy. Of course, it could also be Shemali. He might not have betrayed Ro at all." Yuan Yu pretended to walk around, and he recovered a bit of Dara's characteristics. "Senior brother?" The Shui-Tu King's eyes focused. "Old turtle. 3 poisons, who is your senior brother?" Yuan Yu bowed slightly. "My 2 friends, I am Zhengyangzi, a spy from the righteous Ichi sect." The aura on the Shui-Tu King's body suddenly froze, and his face turned ugly. "No wonder the righteous knew our whereabouts so well, no wonder you could turn the tables on the Tao Master of Demon Corpse Tao. Zhengyangzi. Good, very good." The Shui-Tu King's face was full of murderous intent, and he stared at Yuan Yu. Not only did Ajati not have any murderous intent, but he also pressed on the Shui-Tu King's shoulder, and smiled gently. This did not mean that the sect master of the demonic Tao of massacre was calm and cheerful. On the contrary, The calm Ajati was scarier than the ruthless Shwe-Tu king. Old friend. You hid it well. There is no need to hide it now. Yuan Yu sighed. I am not your enemy. In fact, I did not want to be a spy in the demonic Tao, but to avoid a person that I am very afraid of. I am not afraid of being laughed at, but being beside my senior brother is more oppressive and scary than being a spy in the demonic Tao. At that time, he was the leader of the I Chi sect, a famous leader of the righteous Tao. But only I could see through his scholarly appearance, the inhuman nature, so I ran away in fear. I used the excuse of being a spy in the demonic Tao to enter the beauty lady sect. Maybe you don't believe me. Although I was a spy in the righteous Tao, I did not harm the beauty lady sect at all. Yuan Yu sighed. The beauty lady sect is a group of pitiful women. Is this the reason you are a pervert? Fan Wujie was speechless. Because you have been suppressed for a long time next to a senior brother in human skin, but inhuman on the inside, so once you are free, you indulge yourself? Be careful. Yuan Yu reminded. That senior brother of mine is not simple. I suspect that spiritual master Ziyang is not his real backer, and the I Chi sect's foundation is too strange towards him. Whether it is the innate spiritual treasure or the foundation of the sect. Before Ziyang, they are too lowly as Ziyang's dogs. Yuan Yu added inwardly. Moreover, the I Chi sect was able to attract the interest of Patriarch River Styx, causing River Styx Patriarch to order me to infiltrate and hide. The Tao Master Corpse Demon is about to become a pervert. The Shwe-Tu king exclaimed, he has crossed the taboo. When it comes to the Netherworld 9 questions, it is normal for him to become a pervert. Ajati said, his role in the battle that overturned the underworld is definitely not that simple. Monk Avidya might have found out something from Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. One of his missions in the bottomless ruins is definitely to keep an eye on the Tao Master Corpse Demon. Someone who could attract Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's attention might be a key to the underworld's reincarnation great secret. That dragon Dara wants to find the ancestral dragon. The Shwe-Tu king said, it seems credible at the moment. At the crucial moment, I can use clues about the ancestral dragon to exchange for his help. The Blood Sea has clues about the ancestral dragon? Yuan Yu exclaimed, could the disappearance of the Daozu dragon really be related to Patriarch River Styx? The ancestral dragon did not disappear. He left the chaotic 4 seas of his own accord. I know that he went to the Blood Sea in the end. No one forced him. The ancestral dragon entered the Blood Sea of his own accord. He met Patriarch River Styx and left the Blood Sea. The old monk Avidya is also very strange. He is more interested in the Dara Taoists than the bottomless ruins. Yuan Yu added, but I don't know who he's here for. From the clues on the surface, it seems to be the Daolord Corpse Lord, but a Grand Luo's calculations would never be so shallow. He might be interested in everyone. The Tao Master Corpse Demon has the secrets of reincarnation and the underworld. The Dragon Dara might be related to a Xianming ancestral shaman. The disappearance of ancestral shaman Gonggong, Patriarch Kuan Peng, and the ancestral dragon might be related to Patriarch River Styx. The Purple Sun's spiritual master might be the even more ancient Dara. If the One Chi sect is his dog, the One Chi sect originated from the ancient Heavenly Court. They are one of the top sects established by the remnants of the Heavenly Court. If the Purple Sun's spiritual master is their master, wouldn't he be an important figure in the Heavenly Court? If the Purple Sun's spiritual master is their master, wouldn't he be an important figure in the Heavenly Court? Shemali betrayed Ro and joined Patriarch River Styx for a big reason. We don't know who the old monk Avidya is monitoring. It could be all the Dara Taoists or even everyone. The Shwe-Tu king uncovered a corner of the mystery surrounding the 5 Dara Taoists. It involves Lady Hutu, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, Nyuwa Empress, Xianming Ancestral Shaman, Patriarch Gonggong, Patriarch Kuan Peng, Patriarch River Styx, the ancient Emperor Heaven, the primordial demon Emperor, and the demon ancestor of Ro. It involves the destruction of the heavenly court, the collapse of the underworld, the disappearance of the patriarch of witchcraft, the shattering of the chaos, the great war of witchcraft and demons, the sealing of Ro, and the end of the universe. I don't think we are decrypting the secrets. We are playing with fire. Courting death. Ajati commented calmly. Turning back will only lead to a worse death. Yuan Yu said expressionlessly. Moreover, without these chess players playing chess, how can we have a chance to break out of the game against the Dara Taoists? Currently, the mastermind suspected to have made a move is Ro Demon Ancestor. Among the 5 Dara Taoists, there is definitely someone who is in cahoots with the Demon Ancestor of Destruction. This is his chance. At the end of time, Ro looked at a figure slowly walking out of the chaos. She rolled her eyes and said, "Another one. Why is it so lively here today? I can't believe I can see so many old friends, and you dare to come see me." Patriarch River Styx. He suppressed Payaji, opened the blood sea of Calamity Eye, suppressed the Azura demon horde, and the remnants of Ro. The traces of his moves are too obvious. Yuan Yu silently rolled his eyes inwardly. Patriarch River Styx's chess pieces are here. You know nothing about his chess skills. Do you think River Styx is only involved in a few things? For example, the disappearance of the ancestral dragon, the changes in reincarnation, the calamity of the underworld, and the sealing of Ro? But Patriarch River Styx, he is involved in everything, everything? He is involved in all the conspiracies that you can think of. It seems like Spiritual Master Ziyang is not involved in River Styx among the 5 Dara Taoists, but the one who sent me to the One Chi sect as a spy was Patriarch River Styx. Lady Hutu. She is the one who orchestrated the annihilation of the underworld. As one of the leaders of the ancestral witches, she must have done something to the corpse demon Taoist master. At the very least, the one who drove him crazy is ancestral witches Hutu. Kid, are you tired of living by saying that? Someone thought so, and then acted to block out the blood-soaked demon lord's existence. There's also Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. I keep getting the feeling that the ruins we've encountered along the way are hinting at something? The Xue Tu King said solemnly, the Hall of Enlightenment of the Primordial Demon Court, the Garden of Solitude where the revered One of the World spoke of, the blood sea that formed the Eye of Calamity when it invaded the ultimate, Patriarch River Styx's experimental ground, the realm of freedom, the 9 questions of the netherworld, the remnants of Ro, the Khanate time seed, and the fruit of the immortal herb that mysteriously flew out of the forbidden land of the divine mountain. If this has something to do with the great mediums who placed the seeds, the primordial demon emperor, the ancient emperor of heaven, the 12 ancestral witches, the revered One of the World, and the 2 demon ancestor. All of them are involved. The Xue Tu King suddenly said to the other 3, "Let's go forward first, and sort out the clues along the way. Aren't you afraid of flying to your death, because you know too much?" Yuan Yu glanced at him indifferently. The Xue Tu King smiled and said, "I'm not afraid. I have someone above me." Fan Wujia looked at him deeply, his eyes filled with deep envy. "It was good to have someone above you. Let's start with the Khanate time seed. This should be the starting point of all the arrangements." The Khanate time seed appeared out of nowhere, and this is the only key to the heaven of Dara. That is why it attracted the attention of the 3 religions. The 3 poisons, as a spy of the righteous path, when the golden chaos fragment appeared 10,000 years ago, you formed a karmic connection with fellow Taoist Fan and seized the initiative. The 3 poisons used the dragons of the 4 seas to hunt you down. This is the beginning of the dragon's involvement. The dragons of the 4 seas are not simple characters. The dragons of Dara had their eyes on you at this time. On the surface, they used the excuse of forcing you to enter the ultimate to search for treasures, but in reality, the 3 religions of the Buddhist sect, the Dark Demon sect, and the dragons work together to trick fellow Taoist Fan into going to the heaven of Dara. Here, the dragons and the three poisons work together to force fellow Taoist Fan into the depths of the ultimate. Currently, everyone's plan is to go to the heaven of Dara. Ajati joined the plan because of his and Shemali's conspiracy. The Buddhist sects Fajing joined the plan as a representative. The spiritual master Ziyang joined the plan because of the three poisons. The dragons of Dara followed behind fellow Taoist Fan. Then, the three poisons brought fellow Taoist Fan to Luo Iloa City. Here comes the problem, the Shui Tu King said as he walked. The three poisons are spies of the righteous path, and they have nothing to do with Shemali. Why would they bring fellow Taoist Fan into the trap? The one who informed Shemali was you, sect master. The lifeless hierarch smiled slightly. He was rather proud and did not feel awkward at all. After all, this was an old tradition of the demonic path. Then why did the three poisons work together? The Shui Tu King looked at Ajati and Yuan Yu and said, "But the real way to enter the heaven of Dara is because the remnants of Ro are hiding in the blood sea of tribulation I. Who was the one who suppressed the remnants of Ro?" Yuan Yu asked back. The blood-soaked demon lord took a deep breath and did not pursue the matter any further. "I understand." Yuan Yu explained himself. "Why did I bring fellow Taoist Fan to Shemali? It was because the destructive storm of the ultimate brought us to the primordial corroding blood sea. I can't control the landing point of the destructive storm." The Shui Tu King fell silent. Now, everyone knew which great divinity had interfered and placed this chess piece. The Shui Tu King laughed awkwardly and said, "The elder ancestor is a great strategist. We will definitely go through fire and water for his great plan." He stared at Yuan Yu and Fan Wujie fiercely and said, "We are all elder ancestors people, right?" Fan Wujie glanced at the eight-armed demon god tattoo on his body. It was the mark formed by the blood oath of the demonic path. Yuan Yu silently revealed the tattoo of a dancing heavenly enchantress on his neck. Instantly, everyone came to an agreement. Yuan Yu laughed and said, "The demon ancestor is a great strategist," Ajati said with a fanatical expression. "We are all united for the great cause of the demon ancestor." Fan Wujie had no choice but to agree with him. The demon ancestor is wise and powerful. It is good. It is good. After Ancestor River Styx made his move and sent Fan Wujie and the others to Shemali, the Shui Tu King continued to analyze. In the eyes of the Blood Sea Calamity, fellow Taoist Fan first met the Taoist Lord of Corpse Demon Dao and hid in the Aeon's Calamity to obtain the key to enter Ro's seal from the remnants of Ro. Then, the innate seed of time was sent in, and Payaji's plan began. Payaji planned to save the demon ancestor of Ro, but later, we found out that it was impossible. Therefore, this was not Payaji's real plan. Payaji was hidden by Adara, and no secrets could be kept from her. Therefore, she was abandoned. Then, who was the one who was working with Payaji? Was it the Taoist Lord of Corpse Demon Dao who hid beside Payaji? Or was it Shemali who betrayed Payaji and killed the remnants of Ro? The Shui Tu King said calmly, "The one who is working with the demon ancestor of Ro is the Dara." Ro looked at the figure in front of her with a complicated expression. Shemali stood in front of Ro, showing no fear. "You still dare to come and see me?" Ro said coldly. "Why not?" Shemali said, "I used to be your subordinate, your most loyal follower, but you betrayed us to Ancestor River Styx. You betrayed us first and gave the position of River Styx to him. You were the one who betrayed us first. You abandoned Azura. Am I not obeying your opinion?" Rose sighed and said, "I am sorry. But this isn't a reason for you to betray Vemeshido and the others. Shimori, did you send your subordinates to their deaths, just to show your loyalty to the Nether River and find a way out for the Azura you speak of?" Ro revealed a shocking piece of information. Shemali was not Payaji's subordinate. On the contrary, he was Payaji's leader, an Azura king who was as famous as Vemechito and one of Ro's right-hand men. I used to be the most loyal and worshipped you, Queen Ro. Shemali said, but when you gave up on Azura and gave us to River Styx, I was also the most disappointed. So, I gave up on the great Tao you passed down, gave up on my previous fruit of Tao, and gave it to Payaji. I am no longer the most valiant vanguard under Queen Ro of Azura tribe. So, when you needed us again, I returned to you as an insignificant pawn. I hoped that you could rise again and become the king of Azura. We were betrayed by our father, you. Now we hope that you can become our king again, but you betrayed us again as a king. Shemali said coldly. You coveted the great pie that ancestor River Styx painted for you. You touched the great Tao of destruction, and you became stronger. But we, Azura, lost our foundation, the great Tao of the Blood Sea. We were completely abandoned by River Styx. At that time, I returned to the Blood Sea and apologized to ancestor River Styx. A complicated expression appeared on Ro's face. It was a mixture of shame and anger. Or it could be called shame and anger. Ancestor River Styx was really amazing. I finally realized that River Styx didn't care about Azura at all. He could create a race to replace Azura at any time. He could create a new Azura tribe at any time. When we left the foundation of the Blood Sea, our foundation would be replaced by the new race created by River Styx. Azura would cease to exist. At that time, I only thought that if I surrendered to ancestor River Styx, I might be able to preserve Azura's foundation. You led the other tribesmen to build a new foundation for us, but you failed. You fell into River Styx's trap. At that time, I had no other choice. Everything was for our tribe. Shemali said calmly. Rahu stared at the dead body of Payaji that Shemali had brought over. The old master of demon shaman grinned, then transformed into a thick, undispellable shadow, darted out of Payaji's dead body, walked to Shemali's back, and said with a smile, King Shemali, my mission is done. Ancestor thinks highly of you this time. Shemali's face was expressionless. Ro sighed, well said, but it is still a betrayal. Shemali, go. I will give you what you want this time. But the next time you appear in front of me, there will only be one outcome. Ro grabbed Payaji and slipped into the darkness. Holding Payaji's corpse, Ro didn't revive it immediately. He stood in the center of the darkness, facing another direction. His other head looked up at the chaos. Demon Corpse Tao Master walked out from that direction. Ro sneered. You had a deal with Payaji, but where is Payaji now? Demon Corpse Tao Master said, she was kidnapped. But she should be in your hands now. So, you still dare to make a deal with me? Now is not the time to make a deal. Demon Corpse Tao Master said, I have lost the right to make a deal. So, I am here to make a deal with you. Xue Tu and the others might not have imagined that there was more than one person who colluded with Ro. There were three, and Ro's real plan didn't rest on these three traitors, but on another person who knew a lot, knew what she couldn't say, and was completely loyal to Ro, Dara. Shemali returned to the chaos. Payaji was very powerful, as expected of his most favored subordinate, and the successor of his position. In the face of ancestor River Styx, she was able to make a deal with River Styx in a hopeless situation. So, Payaji could only be revived through him or Demon Corpse Tao Master. His resurrection process had to be controlled by ancestor River Styx. But Payaji's method of making a deal with the enemy's highest leader behind her own king's back was actually a betrayal. Although Payaji's betrayal was for Ro's sake, Ro couldn't accept it. For her own king's benefit, she had to betray her own king. Payaji, what are you thinking? Shemali sighed. Payaji, what secrets did you learn in the ultimate? Why did you cooperate with Demon Corpse Tao Master? Why did you find me in the end? Why did you submit to River Styx? Shemali recalled that when Payaji was drowned in the sea of blood, he connected the clues in his hands and discovered a shocking secret. He overturned all his original plans, submitted to River Styx, and obtained the possibility of resurrection. In the end, he reached an agreement with Demon Corpse Tao Master, who was hiding among his subordinates. He even left behind his last words, entrusted his corpse to Shemali, and made a fake plan to create a pure land in the Sea of Blood. Now, he followed his last words and gave his corpse to Ro, and as expected, he got what Payaji promised when she was alive. The things that Payaji and Mo knew were all clues left behind by Payaji. Why did Demon Corpse Tao Master succeed? Why was his plan actually a way to enter the deepest part of the ultimate, to enter the end of time and the sky of Dara? Because Payaji's real plan, the real key, was the corpse he left behind. When Payaji's corpse was brought to Rahu, Rahu would be able to resurrect her. That was the true start of his plan. However, the true executors of his plan were two mortal enemies on the surface: the Tao Master of Corpse Demon who had been hiding among the remnants of Azura for eons, and the traitor of Azura, King Shimori. This plan was even approved by River Styx, who had sealed Ro. This was the real plan that could deceive Dara, the real plan that could divert Dara's attention from the remnants of Ro. Payaji and the other remnants of Ro were the pawns used to divert attention. The real key had always been Payaji's corpse. Who would have thought that after the remnants of Ro had been completely defeated, captured, or killed, and the remnants of Ro had vanished into thin air, the most important key had been personally delivered to Ro by Payaji's enemy. River Styx's participation had deceived too many people. This was because this plan needed the help of the Styx to conceal it. Only then would there be a chance of success. But who would have thought that River Styx, who had sealed Ro and was supposed to be the scariest enemy of Ro's remnants, would actually help the remnants of Ro to deceive everyone? Payaji's answer was simple: to be River Styx's pawn. Don't be afraid of being used. You should be afraid of not even being used. Payaji, the old monk Wu Ming, stood before the sword light that had sealed off the river of time and sighed. Demons are dancing wildly, none of them are easy to deal with. Dara of the Dragon Clan was speechless in the middle of the indescribably dark star, where there was no light. Payaji suddenly opened his eyes. He knelt down on one knee in front of Ro. "My king!" Chapter 1288. Fan Wujie walked forward in the chaos, going against the flow of time. With every step he took, his condition regressed greatly. His realm and cultivation base fell rapidly, and soon, he fell below the realm of Tao Monarch. Only the Dara characteristic of the Timelight Vine that never regressed did not degrade. Instead, the Timelight Vine in his consciousness started to absorb the power of the Timelight he walked past. Fan Wujie took the time to look at the few people who were traveling with him. He saw that Yuan Yu's face was not red, and he was not panting. Instead, his body seemed to be stronger than before. The bloody-soaked demon monarch and the lifeless cult leader were also very calm. He could not help but feel a little shocked. These old monsters have cultivated for a really long time. I have already fallen from the realm of Tao Monarch, and they still do not seem to have their cultivation base shaken. If not for the fact that my Timelight Tao seed had sprouted, and a part of its power never regressed, I would have come to them on a silver platter. Just like that, another tens of thousands of years passed. Fan Wujie's cultivation base had regressed to below the level of an immortal, and his corporeal body had visibly become younger. At this time, Fan Wujie's face was still young and inexperienced. Even his Tao heart, which had been calm and steady, and had gone through hundreds of trials and tribulations, had become lively. It was as if he had become young and impulsive as time turned back. At this time, the three people beside him still looked the same. Fan Wujie thought to himself, these old monsters really have a deep foundation. In front of us is the time of my birth. Fan Wujie said, if we go any further, I will no longer exist. Yuan Yu counted with his fingers and said, we are only at this point. The Shui-Tu King's mouth also twitched. Fellow Taoist Fan, you are truly a genius, and you are in your prime. You have made me feel ashamed of living for so many years. Ajati joked, why don't we stop for a moment when fellow Taoist Fan was young, and let fellow Taoist Fan reminisce about his childhood? Fan Wu-jie thought about how his fleshly body had returned to its youth, and how it had looked so cute and adorable. In front of such an old monster, an undying old man, his little face filled with baby fat, and his innocent and childish look. Fan Wu-jie felt a chill run down his spine, and he hurriedly took a few steps forward to cross the time period. As soon as he crossed the time period in which he was born, Fan Wu-jie's entire existence collapsed. His fleshly body, mystic power, nascent divinity, everything that made up him all turned illusory, turning into chaotic energy that slowly faded from his body. Strands of chaotic energy were stripped from his existence and thrown into the chaotic ocean behind him. After all of Fan Wu-jie's existence faded, what was revealed was actually a vine that was connected to the end of time and entwined with cosmic light true water. When Yuan Yu and the other two saw Fan Wu-jie reveal his true nature, their faces changed. Fan Wu-jie could sense his non-existent self, as if everything that had happened in the cycle of reincarnation had become a mark that was branded onto his substructure. Somehow, he understood that after his nascent divinity, his fleshly body, and all of his existence had vanished, all of his memories and past had transformed into a true spirit mark that represented his true self. This imprint of true spirit helped him stabilize himself. When the river of time flowed forward, he could still maintain his future memories and self. So this is me, and this mark is the true spirit? Fan Wu-jie curiously observed the mark that had condensed his existence. This is the true spirit. Yuan Yu sighed. It was formed by the mark of reincarnation on your body, and it records everything about you. Even if you don't have your past, it can still maintain your self-existence. This is protection, and also imprisonment. Shui Tu King said coolly. To become Dara, one has to break free from the shackles of the true spirit. Other than oneself, no one can define the self. This is Dara. Hide the true spirit mark. Shui Tu King said. The true spirit mark is very important to those who are below Dara. Compared to the so-called blood essence, horoscope, and 8 characters, it is much closer to your substructure. If someone were to pry into it, it would be very harmful. When Fan Wu-jie heard this, he immediately choked. He hurriedly retracted his true spirit, wrapping it in layers of cosmic true water and hiding it in the depths of time and space. So, this thing was really that important. So you guys are trying to pry into my substructure and warn me. Even if you want to take advantage of me, you still have to act like a good person. Fan Wu-jie's post-celestial existence was removed, and he only retained the characteristics that were close to Dara's, so he paid close attention to the 3 old monsters beside him. After walking for a few more periods, the 3 old monsters, Yuan Yu, Shui Tu, and Wu Xing, still showed no obvious changes. Fan Wu-jie was secretly shocked. These 3 were probably true peak Tao Lords, people who were only a step away from the realm of Dara. The top old monsters in the universe. At this time, Fan Wu-jie had already begun to encounter some Tao Lords who were lost in the sea of chaos. There were Tao Lords and golden immortals from the righteous and evil sides, as well as mighty bodhisattvas from the Buddhist League. All of them were stuck in their prime and did not move forward. If they moved forward, they would enter an even weaker era, and if they moved backward, they might lose themselves. If they stayed where they were, as time passed, because of the reversal of time and space in the sea of chaos, they would gradually move away from the primitive universe. Of course, the process of leaving the original universe was very long. Leaving the original universe and approaching other universes would require at least an immeasurable amount of time. This place is indeed not a good place. Fan Wu-jie sighed. Without an endless lifespan, and without attaining the characteristics of Dara, one will only be trapped in his own timeline, unable to advance or retreat. That's not true. Shui-Tu King said disdainfully. Those who are truly wise and have great perseverance will naturally be able to grasp their opportunities. Delaying here and being stuck between a rock and a hard place, they are just mediocre people with weak minds. Yuan Yu also smiled. Although there is a cosmic trap here, as long as one has enough perseverance, they will naturally be able to live another life. Live another life? Fan Wujie seemed to have been touched by something. He had the faint inspiration of comprehending the cycle of reincarnation in the future, and very soon, he was touched by something, but he still couldn't comprehend it in a short time. Ajati explained, "Don't look at how there's nothing in the chaos sea. In fact, the chaos aura beneath our feet contains universes after universes. The chaos aura contains everything. You think that they're trapped in a trap where nothing appears, but in fact, they're only trapped by their own knowledge. The universe can't be seen, and the great Tao is unknown. That's why they are standing on the chaos sea. If they fall into the chaos sea, they will discover that the universe has always been beside them. They can't detect it." Fan Wujie asked in astonishment, "But this primal chaos is the great god Zhulong's seal. How can they break it? This chaos trap, other than using the number 1 killing power in the heavens to break it, there is another way." The Shui-Tu King asked Fan Wujie, "Fellow Taoist Fan, have you not comprehended it yet?" Fan Wujie's mind flashed, and he seemed to remember something. He thought about it carefully and remembered that this was the moment when he crossed the point of his birth, the moment when he went from existence to non-existence. The entire primal chaos seemed to have changed, but he was in a hurry to cross this point, so he didn't notice it at this time. Fan Wujie came to a realization: they still have a chance to cross the point of their birth, the moment when they go from existence to non-existence. Because they don't exist, Zhulong's seal is meaningless. The primal chaos will be broken at that moment, and they will be able to let their true spirit imprint fall into the chaos sea, and in the past universe, they will be able to reincarnate into themselves. But after their true spirits go through this reincarnation, all their memories of the future will turn into primal chaos, which is equivalent to falling into the mystery of the womb. Every Tao Lord on the path of cultivation, although there is an innate talent and comprehension, acquired temperament and opportunities are more important. No one can be sure that after they reincarnate, their path will be smooth sailing, and they will cultivate to become a Tao Lord. This is a life and death trial, which is equivalent to cultivating a new life. No wonder fellow Taoists said that it is another life. Fan Wujie sighed. The Shui-Tu King smiled and said, "If that is all, then wouldn't it be a waste of the great opportunity of the chaos sea? These people care too much about the results of their cultivation, but they don't know that Zhulong's seal is not aimed at them, but at all things that are tainted after the heavens, all existences that disrupt the order of time and space. What trapped them in the primal chaos is the cultivation and memories that they cherish as much as their lives. As long as these memories are washed away, they will return to their original purity, and the primal chaos will disappear. So the most important thing to cultivate in the chaos sea is to be willing to give up. Give up the acquired things and protect the innate weakness. Protecting the innate weakness is like returning to a seed, which can naturally take root and germinate in the primal chaos. If we take all the Tao of Zhulong's innate purity, we will just be reincarnating and walking again. It is not in line with the original intention of us post-celestial lifeforms. However, if we are not willing to give up our cultivation and memories, we will inevitably be incompatible with the primal chaos and be trapped in the primal chaos trap. The true cultivation method to live another life is between the two, and it requires the cultivator to grasp the delicate balance between the two. On one hand, we have to give up the taint, and on the other hand, we have to maintain ourselves. In the end, we stand above the chaos sea, but the shadow enters the past universe. The God is on the sea, and the person is in the sea. We control our own fate and live another life. Fan Wujie was silent when he heard this. After a long time, he sighed and said, "How difficult is this? How can it be cultivation if it is not difficult?" The Shui-Tu king smiled and did not think much of it. At this time, they had walked far away. Only then did Fan Wujie notice the changes in the three people beside him. The Shui-Tu king had become younger. His thick eyebrows were sharp, and his aura was awe-inspiring. Every move he made was domineering, and he was like a big shot of the devil path. Ajadi had a murderous aura, but he had the appearance of a cold young man. Yuan Yu's greasy aura was gone, and between his brows, there was an extremely righteous aura. He was a handsome young man. Fan Wujie calculated carefully. They had already walked on the long river of time, and they were close to the time of the immeasurable calamity. As expected of three old monsters, it's almost time for the primordial world to shatter. Fan Wujie came to a realization and said, "You guys can't have proven your Tao before the primordial world shatters, right?" The Shui-Tu king and Ajadi smiled and said, "At this point in time, we are already close to our origin. The primordial world shatters still have to go a little further." Indeed, after a few steps, Yuan Yu was the first to withdraw his intrinsic nature, and revealed a ball of yang qi that was Dara's characteristic. The Shui-Tu king's face turned cold, and he said coldly, "As expected of the righteous I Chi sect." Not long after, Ajadi also withdrew his true self, and revealed a gray, almost transparent, but constantly changing sword qi. This was his Dara characteristic. The Shui-Tu king finally withdrew his true self, and the Dara characteristic that was revealed was a river of blood, and it was extraordinary. However, he was the one with the strongest intrinsic Dara characteristic among them. Although Fan Wujie could not see their true spirit imprints, he was confident that he could see through some of them, and he immediately calmed down. In the dark, Yuan Yu and the others exchanged glances, and they said, "How much did you expose just now?" "I couldn't hide it. I exposed about 60 to 70%. "Who are you trying to fool?" "At most 30%, no more." "What about you?" "I have a backup plan, and only 20% of what I showed him was real." "And you, Shui-Tu king, you hid it well, didn't you? That river of blood is at most a piece of your skin. Showing him a piece of skin is already good enough." Fan Wujie did not know what they were secretly talking about, and he looked around cautiously, and even stopped in his tracks, and said in a low voice, "According to the information revealed by the Bodhi tree's growth rings, it should be the time when the primordial world shatters. We do not know what we will see in this era. If something unusual happens, it will be very scary." Just as Fan Wujie and the others were hesitating, a bell suddenly rang out in front of them. Fan Wujie and the others' faces changed. "Not good. The bell of chaos is really ringing." Fan Wujie's face twisted in fear, and he screamed in his heart, "I was just guessing, don't make me guess so accurately." As the bell rang, the sea of chaos in front of them tumbled endlessly, and the chaotic qi boiled. A huge bell, the color of chaos, blocked the sea of chaos in front of them, and set off a shocking storm. As the sound waves swept across the sea of chaos, the sound lingered. When the bell rang, Fan Wujie, Yuan Yu, and the others could not help but be frozen in the sound of the bell. The sound of the bell distorted time and space, and the chaotic qi seemed to be frozen, neither dissipating nor moving. It was extremely strange. Fan Wujie and the others could not move, and they could not even think, and could only see the scene in front of them. It was an infinitely vast heavenly palace, extremely majestic, and countless celestial generals and celestial soldiers were stationed in the heavenly palace, and countless weapons of war were activated. This was not just a heavenly palace, this was a fortress of war, a conquering universe, and a divine court. On it, Fan Wujie saw a palace that was very familiar to him. The Hall of Enlightenment. At this moment, the Hall of Enlightenment was more than 10,000 times more majestic than the ruins they saw. layers of time and space, countless golden immortals, and innumerable connate gods were stationed inside. Countless golden figures stood in the heavenly palace, and each of their auras was no weaker than the few of them. As the sound of the bell spread, the chaos was broken by the sound waves of the bell, and the chaotic chi collapsed into a universe, and the sky entered it. Just as a gap was opened, they saw the universe on the other side, and there were also countless celestial soldiers and generals, waiting in battle formation, and their auras were monstrous. The heavenly palace entered that universe, and after a while, a murderous aura shot up into the sky, and the endless murderous aura dyed the sea of chaos black. Fan Wujie and the others could not help but fall into that battlefield. They were so scared that their souls left their bodies. In that terrible battlefield, they could not even be considered as small soldiers. If they were to get involved, would they still be alive? Fan Wujie roared, "Fellow Taoists, lend me a hand." He urged the timeless vine with all his might, and when the bell was about to pull them into it, he moved a distance on the river of time, but in the end, he was still pulled into the sea of chaos, into the universe of the past. As the bell slowly dissipated, it could be countless years, or maybe it was just a moment, but in the chaos of the bell, time had no meaning. Fan Wujie felt the light in front of him gradually moving, and he could vaguely see many figures flashing in front of him. Laughter came into his ears, and Fan Wujie was relieved. Since there was such laughter, it meant that they were not involved in the bloody battle between the immemorial demon court and the ancient celestial court. As long as it was not the worst outcome, everything was fine. The laughter said, "Sister, look, that is the fleet of Imperial Prince Ziyang patrolling the sky. I wonder which Imperial Prince Ziyang is, to have such a grand procession? The ancient universe is ruled by the celestial court, and all races are respected. How awe-inspiring. It is said that the Emperor Heaven has not shown his divinity for several eons already. It is said that he wants to abdicate. Imperial Prince Ziyang is very powerful. Now, it is Emperor Zhuanxu who is ruling the world. Even if the Emperor Heaven wants to abdicate, it should be Emperor Zhuanxu who ascends the throne. Sister, where did you hear this nonsense from?" The light in front of him gradually became clearer, and the blurry scene became vivid. Fan Wujie saw a decorated pleasure boat sailing across the sky above a huge abyss. On both sides of the boat were immortal peaks that pierced through the clouds, and there were pavilions on the peak. Between the pavilions, there were either people riding on clouds or black wind. Countless immortals were rising and falling on the immortal peaks on both sides of the boat, and there were no less than 100,000 clouds coming and going. 100,000 immortals, and this is just a casual look. Fan Wujie was a country bumpkin in the universe, so he had never seen such a scene before. Even the great cultivation worlds in the universe could not afford to support too many immortals. Everyone usually hid in their respective mountains and only gathered when there was a major event. The elites of a world were naturally bigger than this, but they had never seen such a lively scene. It was like a country bumpkin in a feudal society who had transmigrated to the modern world, and just the people in the square was enough to scare him to death. Fan Wujie was like a scholar in the ancient times who suddenly transmigrated to a large commercial square in the modern world. There were not enough eyes for him to see. At this time, the two voices from before suddenly laughed, and Fan Wujie turned to look, only to see a young girl in green, leaning against a young girl in white who looked more mature, giggling. "Sister, look at that person, his expression is so funny." The young girl in green whispered into the ear of the young girl in white, obviously laughing at Fan Wujie. Fan Wujie's expression was slightly awkward. The young girl in white glanced at Fan Wujie, and her face showed shock. She pinched the young girl in green and said, "Little Qing, don't talk nonsense." Clearly, he could tell that Fan Wujie was an extraordinary person. Fan Wujie swept the two with his gaze. The white-robed woman was a peak-stage celestial immortal, on the verge of becoming a Tao Lord. The azure-robed woman, however, had only just reached the celestial immortal level. She was not a small character, but she was not worthy of Fan Wujie's attention. Along the way, Dao monarchs were like dogs, and Dara was everywhere. I thought the universe had changed, and I didn't recognize them anymore, and I couldn't live anymore. Seeing the familiar heaven immortal trash, Fan Wujie felt the urge to cry. After adventuring in the ultimate for so long, he almost thought that he was worthless as a Dao monarch. Now he saw so many ants, and they all breathed heaven immortals, earth spirit, and weak rogue immortals. How wonderful! The game seems to have returned to the way I am familiar with. It is no longer hell mode. Fellow Daoist Fan. The voice behind him made Fan Wujie freeze. He slowly turned his head, and sure enough, it was those three again. Yuan Yu looked around excitedly and mumbled, "Is this the prehistoric era?" Xue Tu King was surrounded by a shadow of demonic energy, and he put his hand on Fan Wujie's shoulder passionately. The young girl in green, little Qing, saw Xue Tu, who reeked of blood, and Ajati, who had a cold face and sharp eyebrows, and a sword aura that kept people away. She pulled the young girl in white, and said in a low voice, "Sister, these people don't look like good people, let's stay away from them." "Little Qing, don't be so rude." The young girl in white bowed slightly to Fan Wujie, and said, "Little Qing, please forgive me for offending you, fellow Taoists." Fan Wujie was finally released from the hellish mode, and he would not take such a small thing to heart. He immediately waved his hand and said, "It's fine, but I heard you mention Prince Ziyang. We are all from a small place, what kind of person is he?" When Fan Wujie revealed his weakness, little Qing could not help but look down on him, and she was also very curious. "There is someone in this world who does not know Prince Ziyang? You know Celestial Emperor Ziyang, right?" Fan Wujie shook his head honestly and said, "I do not know. What kind of remote place did you actually come from? You don't even know the important people in the heaven. Don't tell me you don't know the heaven?" Little Qing said quickly, and the young girl in white seemed to be worried that Fan Wujie and the others would lose face, so she quickly pulled little Qing, and said in a reproachful tone, "Little Qing." Chapter 1289. Hearing that, Fan Wujie smiled and said, "My 3 senior brothers and I come from a poor and remote place, but no matter how ignorant we are, we naturally know about the prestige of the Heaven Court. Is it just that when we were experimenting with spells, we lost our way and landed here by mistake? Do you know where this place is? Why are there so many immortals coming and going? In our small place, it is rare to even see a fellow immortal riding on a cloud. The 3 behind you have a strong ghostly aura around them, and their bodies reek of blood. They don't look like good people." Hiding behind the lady in white, little Qing smiled slyly and said, "Who knows if they are traitors who are trying to sneak into today's grand meeting?" The lady in white advised softly, "Little Qing, don't talk nonsense. Sister. Looking at how the 4 of them obviously have something to ask of you, I guess they are trying to get information out of us. These people have a strange background. If we get some information out of them, and if there is a mess later, won't we be implicated? It is better to be straightforward." Hearing that, Fan Wujie smiled awkwardly. He was indeed trying to get information out of them. Not to mention anything else, where was this place? And which era was this? Lest the heaven and earth split open in the next moment, and the ancient demon court descended through time and space, turning this auspicious grand meeting into a bloody battlefield, there was no way to escape. Beside him, the Xue Tu King said in a low voice, "Little girl, don't say it, we 3 brothers are honest people, we have never done anything evil in our lives. Only this 4th brother is born to not know his place. His tongue is slippery, and he is not honest enough." Little Qing smiled coldly and said, "The smell of blood around you is so thick, your whole body is filled with murderous intent, and you look so overbearing, I can tell that you are a murderous person, and you still have the cheek to call yourself an honest person. And that white face next to you, his expression is cold, and when he raises his eyebrows, there is a sharp aura coming from him. He is obviously a sword immortal who walks the path of no emotions. This kind of person does not recognize family, they are extremely ruthless. That white face in Taoist robe, on the other hand, seems to have some righteousness, but hanging around with you guys, he is definitely not a good person. And you? Little Qing turned her head and stared at Fan Wujie as she said, "You have a glib tongue, and you can't even hide the arrogance on your body. With just one look, I can tell that you are the kind of person who comes from a domineering and arrogant sect, and you have cultivated an air of arrogance that is not suitable for the times. Although the three of them are evil, they are still steady. You do not look like they are the same kind of people, and you look like you are brothers. It would be strange if there is nothing fishy about this." Little Qing wrinkled her nose. Fan Wujie sighed, cupped his fists and said, "This big brother of this little brother is known as the Butcher. He has a slaughtering skill passed down in his family. Don't be fooled by the smell of blood and murderous intent. He is actually busy working all day, so it is inevitable that he will be contaminated. This second brother of this little brother, although he does not smile on the surface, he is extremely loyal. He is a wanderer. This third brother of this little brother is a scholar, a romantic, and has a large fire-date forest at home. Only I, this little brother, am the son of an impoverished family. I have ruined my family business, and I travel the world with my three brothers." Fan Wujie cupped his fists and said, "What a glib tongue." Little Qing laughed coldly and said, "No matter what you say, I will not care. Sister, let's go. Don't get involved with these troublesome things." The lady in white only pressed on Little Qing's hand, and said with a gentle smile, "Little Qing, even if there is trouble, we have stood here for so long. We have already fallen into the eyes of others, and there is no way to explain it." She turned around and said to Fan Wujie and the others, "Could it be that you have also heard that the Milky Way Navy is patrolling the area, and the Heaven Heavens patrolling the area on behalf of the Heaven Heavens? Are you here to show off your skills, to see if there is a strange person with a high background? The Milky Way Navy is patrolling?" Fan Wujie and the others looked at each other, and it was Fan Wujie who took over the conversation. "The Heaven Heavens patrolling the area? Could it be that Prince Ziyang?" The lady in white smiled and said, "Yes, it is that Prince Ziyang. We are not sure which prince of Imperial Emperor Ziyang. We only know that his identity is incomparably noble. This southern bright barbarian region is just a small and desolate region in the wilderness, and the Heaven Heavens Milky Way Navy patrolling the wilderness only comes once every few years. Therefore, every time this festival comes, it is extremely lively. The Heaven Heavens patrolling the area has a name in this realm. It is called the Sky-Bearing Meeting. The Heaven Heavens patrolling the area has the responsibility of patrolling the area. Therefore, there are often strange people who show some of their skills during the Sky-Bearing Meeting, and serve the patrolling envoy, hoping to be recommended to the Heaven Heavens, and earn their status. The lady in white was not sure if it was intentional, but she avoided probing into their background, and only said some information that was known to everyone, but it also helped Fan Wujie and the others to fill in the gaps. Although the southern bright barbarian region was just a corner of the wilderness, it was bigger than any of the heavens in the future. Today was the day when the Heaven Heavens patrolled the area, and no one knew how many cultivators and immortals would rush over. The flow of people was extremely complicated, and it was impossible to find out everyone's background. The lady in white did not say much, but she just happened to tell them when and where, and also, intentionally or unintentionally, filled in the gaps in their background. Now that they heard that the Heaven Heavens patrolling the area was patrolling, in order to get his recommendation and be conferred a title by the Heaven Heavens, a few rogue cultivators rushed over from a remote and desolate place, became sworn brothers, and set foot on this pleasure boat. With this kind of background, there were no obvious flaws. Fan Wujie and the others were also tactful, and after getting the lady in white's secret information, they did not harass her any more, lest they bring any trouble to her. The wilderness was extremely vast, and it was also Fan Wujie's first time seeing the entire wilderness. The pleasure boat he was on was sailing in the sky, above the 9 heavens. In the world of heavens, it was almost the end of the 9 heavens, but here it was just touching the clouds. Below the boat was a sea of clouds, and in the sea of clouds, there were extremely tall divine peaks that broke through the clouds, overlooking the sea of clouds. The pleasure boat sailed between the mountains, as if it was swimming in a canyon. Looking down from the pleasure boat, both sides of the boat were stone walls that were tens of thousands of feet high. Extremely strong gusts of wind were shuttling under the layers of clouds, polishing the stone walls of the divine peaks and giving them a luster that looked like green jade. Fan Wujie only had to estimate the layer of gusts of wind underneath the pleasure boat with his eyes, and he was able to recognize a few gusts of wind that were considered extremely fierce in the entire universe. For example, the water, fire, ice, soul astral wind, the heaven-shattering bone astral wind, the 3 realms freezing wind. These heavenly winds and astral winds, even heaven immortals would be flustered if they encountered them. There were so many immortals here, and even the cultivators who had not become immortals, who had passed through the restrictive passage in the belly of the divine mountain, ascended to the layer of the astral wind, and the sea of clouds, where the airflow was stable. Then they switched to the pleasure boat, and rode on all kinds of flying mounts. Those who were a little worse off could only ride on the clouds, and in the end, even the color of the clouds was not right, so they could only wrap themselves in a gust of black wind, driving the evil wind, and they were not discriminated against. These mountains that passed through the layer of astral wind, and stood tall above the sea of clouds, some of them had been polished into huge palaces that looked like green or white jade. There were also immortal herbs and jade-like flowers, which looked like a palace garden. On the mountains of the isolated islands in the sea of clouds, the immortals who came and went rode on cranes and dragons. Compared to the immortals during the era of the universe, it was really unbelievably free and easy. Especially when Fan Wujie observed carefully, he found that the slightly more exquisite magical treasures and flying ships were all made of innate items, which were extremely precious in the future, innate items that even Tao lords had to carefully trade with. But here there were so many of them that they were like dirt, and everyone could afford them, and they were not precious at all. Whether it was the mounts of the immortals or the birds and beasts that ran around the mountains, they were all ancient species, rare and precious beasts. The huge flying ships and pleasure boats were all piled up with a huge amount of divine wood that was 100,000 years old, and 1,000,000 years old, carved with dragons and phoenixes. Although the restrictive spells attached to them were powerful, they completely relied on the properties of the materials. It seemed like the divine craftsmen here did not care about the materials, but the cost of the work. Although many of the restrictive spells were powerful, one could tell at a glance that they were not meticulously polished, and the subsequent refinement and maintenance were not paid much attention. This made Fan Wujie feel like his heart was being cut by a knife. Fan Wujie beat his chest and stamped his feet, thinking, "Our Fan family has 1,000,000 years old divine wood forest, and it is the family's heritage, a forbidden land that lives and dies with the Brahma heaven realm. How spoiled was I when I was young! Even moving the branches of those divine trees would get me beaten up. You guys only use shavings, and even hollowed-out carvings. Hollowed out is not only a waste, it also lowers the strength of the structure just for that little bit of beauty. What a waste! Why doesn't the heavenly Tao strike you wasteful spirits with lightning?" The corner of Fan Wujie's mouth twitched, but the Shui-Tu king did not care about him. He stared at the dragon beast of a immortal not far away and said in a low voice, "Is that a true dragon? Its bloodline is very pure." Ajati also whispered, "That Pai Xiao is not bad too. Wow. What a majestic beast. This must be the Blue Eyes Golden Swanee. The one riding it is actually a heaven immortal. Second brother, help me cover up." I'll be back soon. The Shui-Tu king, who prided himself on being an honest man, had his eyes reddened. He picked up the demonic blood knife that he carried with him and transformed it into the shape of an axe, wanting to sneak up. Yuan Yu hurriedly pulled him back. Let's get down to business. Don't cause trouble. At this time, a heavenly general dressed like a heavenly general rode a water-repelling golden eyes beast, stepping on the sea of clouds. This connate life form with the ability to repel water, a strange beast that could repel water, stepped on the sea of clouds, stirring up waves on the sea of clouds and sending the golden-armored heavenly general far away. Yuan Yu's hand loosened and he was stunned, his eyes also turning red. These ancient beasts, there are ancient beasts everywhere, and there are even primordial beasts. Connate divine beasts, they are everywhere. Years ago, just to get a little dragon blood, I risked offending the Four Seas Dragon Clan and killed one of their water god. I was chased everywhere in the heavenly realm sea, and they destroyed 8 of my fake identities. The people here are writing them openly. The Shui-Tu king was heartbroken. Aren't they afraid of offending the Four Seas Dragon Clan? So you were the one who did that. Yuan Yu suddenly opened another unsolved case in the universe, but he still said in a low voice, back then, how many direct descendants of the Four Seas Dragon Clan were there? How many are there now? Dragons are lustful by nature, and the primordial dragons are probably still overflowing. They can't even take care of their own clansmen, let alone these bastards. Fan Wujie and the others were, after all, experienced. So what if the cultivation resources here were abundant? He had even seen the destruction of the universe with his own eyes, and the return of all Daos. But now, he had to calm himself down, and focus on the most important thing. Fan Wujie borrowed a strand of the power of the cosmic vine, condensed the cosmic true water in his eyes, and he could see the shadows of the people around him in the river of time, the shadows of the past and the future. He was very unfamiliar with the primordial era, and he was not used to the extremely powerful innate great Tao of time here, and even the 3,000 great Daos. But under the pressure of the 3,000 great Daos, he could barely see clearly. Most of the immortals and cultivators who came and went were below them in the realm of Tao fruit. But compared to the cultivators of the same cultivation base in the heavenly realm, they were generally hundreds or even tens of thousands of times stronger. The huge gap in this range, in terms of resources, understanding of the great Daos, temperament, vision, physique, and even aptitude, lagged behind in all aspects. Additionally, the habits of these cultivators were different as well. Cultivators from the myriad celestial planes were used to fighting each other. Battles of life and death were very common. They would never allow others to find any openings in them. Thus, the techniques they cultivated and the techniques they were proficient in were very complicated. Thus, they would not allow others to find any openings in them. But the immortals and cultivators of the primordial era did not fight frequently, and most of them only cultivated one divine ability to protect their Tao. Even if they refined many magical treasures, most of them focused on refining one. What they pursued was to fight as little as possible. Once they found it hard to retreat, they would use their most powerful divine ability to decide the outcome in a battle of life and death. From the looks of it, it was naturally more cost-effective to specialize in one divine ability and use it to protect the Tao. If the cultivators of the heavenly realm met the primordial cultivators of the same cultivation base, they would lose in the first 10 battles. After 10 battles, there would be winners and losers, and after 100 battles, the odds of winning would be higher. Moreover, this was only the short-term data. Once the primordial cultivators were given a period of time, they would also recultivate the magic and divine abilities to restrain their opponent. It seems that the primordial era was more peaceful than the heavenly realm, Fan Wujie said in surprise. This seemed to be a little different from his impression. Perhaps it's because the battles in the primeval age weren't decided by a few top experts. Instead, they were decided by a more comprehensive, large-scale, thorough, and destructive form. The blood-soaked demon monarch said in a complicated tone. When Fan Wu-jie heard this, he also remembered the glimpse they had before they escaped into this spacetime. It was like a universe that had appeared in the chaotic sea. It was so vast and powerful that it could not be described with words. Even if countless pawns like them came, they would still be reduced to dust in front of it, the Archean divine court. Or rather, the archaic demon court. 360 ancient stars in the universe, countless divine palaces and palaces, layers upon layers of spacetime, innumerable innate gods, celestial soldiers and celestial generals, and together, they formed an enormous heaven realm that was beyond the imagination of Fan Wu-jie and the others. The heavenly palace had cast a deep shadow on Fan Wu-jie and the others. So much so that when the archaic divine court used the bell of chaos to break the primordial chaos and invade the spacetime where the archaic heavenly court was, the four of them lost the courage to resist, and only wanted to escape from that timeline. As the pleasure boats gradually sailed into the wider Cloud Sea Canyon, rows upon rows of flying pleasure boats came and went. They had already arrived at the main route of the Cloud Sea Canyon. At this moment, a huge fleet of ships that cast a shadow as large as a mountain and covered the entire sky slowly sailed towards them from higher up in the sky. This was a fleet that was built for the sake of war, for the sake of great destructive power. Countless innate metals piled up to form the hull of the ship like a mountain range, and the sails were like a continent laid horizontally. Countless strands of magnetic energy turned into thunder and lightning, intertwining on the hull of the ship. The magnetic energy contained in the hull of the ship and the heavy magnetic energy of the primordial earth repelled each other, causing the huge ship to float in the sky. The friction between the magnetic energy produced countless strands of divine lightning, driving this huge warship of all heavens. Under the shadow of the fleet of the Milky Way Navy, Fan Wu-jie felt an indescribable shock in his heart. With the power of the heavenly court, who could rival it? Perhaps the only ones who could destroy the heavenly court were the immortal court of the primordial gods that ruled the primordial world and the heavenly palace that was like a fortress,